and gentlemen of the audience, thank you so much for waiting for us. We okay? John, all right? Okay, we'll start again. Well, thank you again for waiting for us. We were a little late. The reason for our being late is that we did convene an executive session at 6:30 for matters of potential litigation and matters of real estate. And by virtue of Channel 16, may that be on that record. This meeting is a public work session where the board will hear a variety of reports and have discussion regarding topics which may be scheduled for official action at a future meeting. During this meeting, we will not be voting or making the final decision on any topic. Questions and comments by members of the audience will be limited to those topics on the agenda this evening. This meeting is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone, state their name and address. Members of the audience are asking to limit their questions and comments to no more than this evening. I'm making it 5 minutes instead of 3. This limit will permit time for all those who wish to speak to the board. Whenever members of the audience exceed this time limit, the board president, in this case I'm acting as President Pro Tem this evening, may ask the individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker. And as always, you may go around back to the line and start over again if you still need more time. Okay, at this time, our agenda is beginning this evening with Dr. Bose to report to us on matters of the enrollment report. We'll then move on to a presentation regarding our bonds, and then the hearing of 2 new board policies. At that time, I would like to break and have an audience of citizens on all those topics above. From that point, then, we will go on to Dr. Sandra Mangano on the long-range plan and those topics this evening. Diversity, special ed, student life, community partnerships will then convene. There will also be an audience of citizens after that. You'll notice on the agenda that we have some attempted timelines. It is because this board will go back into an executive session at approximately 10:30 for, again, matters of real estate and litigation. Dr. Bose.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is the first report that I will make about the enrollments for the 1996-97 school year. It will come as no surprise to anybody in this audience that our enrollments are up. They are not up, though, as far as the Pell projections are concerned, as high as the high range, but they do come closest to the mid-range compared to the high range and the low range of the Pell projections. The current enrollment as of the end of the third day is 12,889 K-12. Now, the enrollment number that really counts for purposes of state audits and state financial support is the 10th day enrollment. But I'll report to you more about the third day enrollment and compare those enrollments with earlier Pell projections. The elementary school enrollment is 7,344. That comes closest to the mid-range of the Pell projections. And our middle school enrollment is 2,864. That comes closest to the low range of the Pell projection. The high school enrollment is 2,681, and that's closest to the low range. So you see what we have is a mixed bag. It's a combination of being closer to the low range or the mid-range. In no case were any of the enrollment numbers close to what was called the high range of the Pell projections. We'll continue to monitor these numbers and have recommendations that might be appropriate for the Board of Education as we get closer to that 10th day official enrollment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bose. Okay. Board questions this time? Any board questions? Starting the right, Mrs. Sher.
Only to ask that many years ago the third day enrollments were dismissed because they showed great disparity between that and the 10th day.
That's correct.
In transfers of students out haven't necessarily occurred. And I was just wondering, is there, just how much weight should we place in these numbers as we receive them today?
I think people want to know these numbers, Mrs. Sherwood. You're quite correct. In fact, on more than one occasion, Mrs. Clark and I have commented on how our tradition is that 10th day enrollment generally comes in under the earlier days enrollment. And if we're going to make any decisions that respond to the enrollment, we ought to do so based upon the 10th day enrollment rather than the 3rd day.
So no one should pick this up and run with it in any hysteria or anything of the sort?
It's still far from being what will be a more reliable number on the 10th day. Our principals are still looking at those students carried on the rolls who have not showed up to determine if they're absent or if they have withdrawn. It's easy to count the new kids because generally our parents know you bring your kids to school to enroll them when you just moved. It's not always the case. Parents remember to go to the school before they leave the community withdrawal.
Right, and so we could have an overlapping of accounting on some students. Okay, so we clarify or whether there was a different process that gave even higher credibility than what I might place on these right now. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hill. Okay, Mr. White?
Dr. Bose, what is our largest class at this point in time? Do you have it broken down? Last year, I believe our largest class was first grade. Is that still the case, or is it now into the second grade?
It is still the first grade.
Mr. White? Is that it?
That's it for now.
I might add, Mr. White's, the first, second, third, and fourth grade are now all over 1,000 students, with the first grade being the largest of the four.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Krieger?
Yes, Dr. Bose, in relationship to the green sheet dated August 23rd that the board received a couple weeks ago in our packets, it was green sheet 9196 from Mrs. Clark, we received 3 options by which to consider dealing with some of the potential numbers over and above what was initially anticipated. I am aware and am still being kept abreast of the situation, in particular out at Inglewood. And I'm reviewing the sheet that you included, which has highlighted where we come close or in trouble and where we are definitely over. I have a concern in relationship to Inglewood. Last year, it's my understanding that there were 3 fourth grade classes as well as 3 fifth grade classes. Last year, the fourth grade class was, I believe, at 65 or 57, and the fifth grade class was at 65. Can you tell me, Dr. Bose, knowing that there was 57 coming through at the end of fourth grade, why that third, fifth grade class was dropped?
It was dropped because the original request for additional teachers for elementary schools was not approved by the board in the budget.
Additional teachers.
Yes.
But Dr. Bose, there were 3 teachers there last year.
Yes.
Were there additional, where was the additional, if that's what we had there last year?
The number did not move up to the fifth grade where there were 2 teachers. It stayed with the
No,
fourth
last year
grade.
there was 3 fifth grade teachers at Inglewood.
That number that position was used somewhere else for another grade level in Inglewood. I don't recall what it is right now, but for the same reason of trying to minimize the average number in the whatever number of sections were. That was increased by 1 in order to bring down the average class size.
Well, it would be my recommendation to the board, seeing these particular numbers, knowing what the current status is at third day, I don't anticipate those numbers changing at all between now and 7 days from now.
They changed once in 1 day.
Well,
That number has changed
that
already.
very well may be, and I may prove to be wrong next week, Dr. Bose, but I'm also aware of another room that's being utilized for a different purpose besides a classroom, in particular out at Inglewood. And I think with these kind of numbers, I think being that it's probably one of the only schools that doesn't have, that is utilizing an art room when we're in desperate need of another classroom out there, I think it's incumbent upon this board to immediately consider doing something about putting in a teacher there. because I think 31 and 32 kids in each respective class is way too high. Thank you.
I'm suggesting only, Mrs. Krieger, we wait to the 10th day to know if any other school has a similar condition, so that we're looking at all classes with the same resources and some equitable distribution of those resources. Since the numbers tend to change, and we've already said historically, the 10th day number is more reliable than the earlier days during the first 10 days of school.
Thank you, Mr. Krieger. Mr. Schilling?
No questions.
Mr. Allen?
No questions, but I'll save them for the 10th day enrollment numbers, which
Okay.
are more legitimate than today's numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Mazza?
No question.
Okay, thank you, folks. Again, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, we will be taking an audience of citizens opportunity on this matter, but at the end of Section 3, Board Policies, we'll do that entire Section 1, 2, and 3 at that time for audience of citizens. Okay, Mr. Kelly, if you would introduce our guests and proceed then with presentation regarding bonds.
Thank you, Mrs. Mengel. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we'll hear our first presentation from our recently appointed financial advisor and our bond counsel. What you have before you tonight and in your packets tonight is just a draft form. There are certain items on there that we need to be included in the bond issue, but there are other items that I would like your direction on what you wish included or excluded. You'll see that, you might be shocked to see that there's $29 million. When we talked before, it was between 24 and 25. The new money issue still is between 24 and 25. The $5 million is that refunding that we had talked about previously that will end up saving the district over the course of the bond, $163,000. Hopefully, we're going to have a meeting on Thursday with the finance team and Mr. Bradbury to take back your feedback and come up with a final budget that will be included in your packets before any final vote is taken on April 19th. I'd like to introduce Mr. Robert Bradbury of the firm Dolphin and Bradbury. He will be presenting first, and also here this evening is Mr. Dave Franklin of the firm Pepper, Hamilton and Sheets.
I believe the board members have, I passed this out, there's slight changes in what was handed out as against what's attached to the agenda item. It's sitting in front of each board member. This is the financing report dated September 10th. What I'd like to do is just go through the report for the board members. With regards to it, there is page 1, which summarizes your existing indebtedness of the school district. You have bond issues from 1990 through 1994, and what this is doing is summarizing what your existing debt service is with regards to each of the outstanding bond issues. As you see, you currently have requirements for debt service in the 97-98 school year of $7.7 million, and it stays approximately that for the 4 years thereafter and drops down to $6.4 million and drops off over the life of the outstanding indebtedness to the years 2011-2012 school year. If there's any questions on that, that's just summarizing your existing debt statement. It gives it on a full life of the issue. Your annual audit gives it to you over the first 5 years of what's outstanding. This is to show you the full picture over the life of the outstanding indebtedness. Page 2, and this is where there's a slight difference that we have footnotes that have been attached, are with regards to 3 different sections of the financing. There is the construction portion, which we list at $23 million. The construction portion, as you'll see on note 1, is $18 million for alterations and additions to the North Penn Senior High School, $2,600,000 for $2,647,080, which is alterations and additions to the Penndale Middle School, and the final item that makes up the $23 million is $2,352,920. This is page 2. It's a composition of the bond issue. $2,352,920, which is the school district's portion of the North Montco Voc-Tech school. This is a number that you have already transmitted to that board. at this
Excuse me,
point.
Mr. Bradbury.
Yes.
Some different reports here.
A couple of the board members don't have the complete page.
We don't have
This
the,
was on your desk.
the detail.
I have it.
He's
Bill.
missing
Maybe
part
it's
of it.
another. Maybe it's
Is
another.
there a second
You
one?
have a new copy
Oh,
tonight.
separate from this one?
There it
There
is,
it is.
Bill.
Sorry to interrupt
Sir,
you.
Yes,
for
sir.
the benefit of the audience, the notes that you're sharing are not on the copy
They're
that
not
they
on
have
their
in the
copies,
packet.
that's what I
right.
mentioned.
Thank you.
This is the one section that is different than what was given because it was arrived at late this afternoon with regards to getting all these numbers together.
Thank you.
Okay, wait a minute, I'm going to take a president's pro tem's privilege here. That's not good enough, I'm sorry. Mrs. Tatum, if you would, if Mrs. Tatum's here, would you please take page 2 and run off as many as you could for the audience here? I know you can't do this whole booklet, but at least page 2 will help here.
Is the only change on page 2, Bob?
That's what I was gonna request.
That's correct.
Yes,
So it
thank
Is that
you.
the only change?
That's the only change.
Page 2 only.
Page 2 in this document.
Okay, Mr. Bradbury, I'm sorry, we just can't have it this way anymore. Mrs. Tatum, thank you so much for your gracious help.
What that is doing is coming up with what the 23 million is made up of, which is those 3 projects. The second section is the technology portion, which is 1,000,005, which is a number that Mr. Kelly gave me that was something that the board was considering. This is something for discussion by the board. And the next section is the refunding portion, $5,050,000. This is the amount that is necessary to refund the series of 1991. As Mr. Kelly pointed out, that produces a savings in this fiscal year of $153,000 to the school district. I believe you've already taken that into account in your budgeting process. And then we list the cost of issuance with regards to the financing. The difference here, and this is on page 2, which they are saying, which is different than what is on what was on the public's packet. We outline all of the costs associated with this financing on a more detailed process than what was handed out to the board members, or to the public prior to the meeting. We come up with that when you combine all of those financings to $29,815,000. Are there any questions with regards to that portion?
Mr. Bradbury, just keep going, and we'll have all questions at the
Okay.
end of the report. I know each board member takes things at their own pace, and usually as we go along in presentations, they mark their papers and come back and do everything.
All right, fine, thank you.
Certainly.
The next is the construction portion, and we break out the debt service to be paid on the construction portion. This is on page 3. It's a bond issue of $23,200,000. The $23,200,000 reflects the cost of issuance, which was listed on Schedule 2, along with the $23 million of construction costs. It's a 20-year level debt service payment. You're paying interest only during school year 97-98, and then principal and interest starting in school year 98-99 through the year 2016 through 2017. That is the construction portion. It's for bricks and mortar. We therefore financed it over a 20-year period. Schedule 4. Schedule 4 is the technology portion. Technology being what it is, we could not justify financing technology over a 20-year period. We have it financed over a 10-year period. The bond issue is listed there with amortization from school year 97-98 through the years 2006, 2007. And the debt service on an annual basis is listed there. Schedule 5 is the refunding of the series of 1991 bonds with a new portion of this issue, the series of 96, being for refunding purposes. We list out what the new bonds would look like, with bonds maturing on the same amortization schedule as the series of 91. It is a short issue. They mature by the year 2001, 2002. And if you go over to the third from the last column, we show what the annual debt service would be for the new issue. We show what the existing debt service that is required to be paid on the 1991 issue, and that is showing the refunding savings, which we are taking up front with regards to this financing, and it's something that I think, as I said, the board has reflected in their budgeting process prior to the close of the fiscal year. We then combine all of those projects with the current debt service payable to come up with what the debt picture would be for the school district going forward, assuming that this is the final capital project for the foreseeable future. Are there any questions now?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bradbury. Mr. Kelly, you had mentioned that there is going to be a meeting of the finance team when?
Thursday.
Thursday?
We're about to finalize the time. Mr. Hill, Mrs. Sharp said they both could make it, as well as Mr. Bradbury. And I would like Mrs. Mangle to invite either you or Mr. Clements or your designee to also attend.
Okay. Dr. Bose, will you be on that by chance?
We're hoping to have it at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock?
I think so. I have to check my schedule.
Okay, very good. Was there any meeting prior to this evening of this finance team, Mr. Kelly?
No, there was not.
Okay, just a note, I feel there should have been. It would have helped if the entire finance team, as it exists with Mrs. Scher and Mr. Hill, were all on the same page at the same time before we came in this room tonight. So,
And I would agree with you,
something to
Mrs. Mangle.
remember in the future.
That's for
Please.
sure.
Okay, questions starting to the left, Mr. Mosey.
Yes, if I may. Could you explain to me, and I ask because I don't know, we're going to refinance $5 million and we're saving $167,000. Is that because this bond has come due at this point?
It has a call feature that is September 1 of 1996 that could be called today.
Right.
We're looking to call it on October 23rd, which would be the closing date of the new bond issue. The interest rates ran out to close to 7%. You would be issuing new bonds at something substantially less than 7%, probably on the area, an average interest rate of about 4.5%. So similar to what you do with a home mortgage when someone looks at their home mortgage, that's what you're looking at here, you're refinancing. You are calling $5,050,000 of bonds, or it's actually about $5 million of bonds, $5,005,000 bonds, plus the accrued interest up till October 23rd. You're also financing the cost of issuance, and what you're doing is comparing the new debt service versus the old debt service, and in the process, you save over the life of the issue, you save $167,000, but the bulk of it is in the first year, which is $153,000.
Second question, page number 3, estimated interest rates. Why are we only estimating these interest rates? Can't we lock into these interest rates when we...
They will be locked in on September 19th when the board you have to make a decision with regards to size of issue and so forth. When we have the numbers in place of the size of an issue, and I assume we will have that after a meeting on Thursday, a good idea, we then will have the interest rates locked in at a resolution which you would adopt, and Mr. Franklin can explain that after this.
So these figures...
On September 19th. You would have everything that's in this report would be locked in on September 19th.
Okay, so these rates, you're just drawing an average or just based on what the market is today? Or?
Taking the rates were about a week ago.
Okay. So it's a ballpark is what it really is. I mean, it's...
I didn't just...
I don't mean to pull that out of thin air.
They weren't pulled out of... This is
exactly
similar.
what it is.
This
It
is
isn't
similar to what a different
Okay.
township was about a week ago, which we're hoping has a similar
Okay.
rating to yours. Or we know
I'm
two
just
different-
concerned that we don't enter in a false sense of security here, and we make a decision and we lock them in on the 19th, and these figures change, which they possibly could, and then we have some unhappy people.
You will
around.
have everything, and I think I pointed out when I met with the board back in July, we will have everything to you, not like you came in tonight where you saw it really for the first time. We will have it to you on the Tuesday before the Thursday that you adopt everything, so you have an opportunity to check everything.
Okay, and
We
the
will have
other,
it to Mr. Kelly, and I assume he'll have a way of getting it to all the board members.
and then the other question I have is the figure 1.5 million for technology. That probably isn't a question for you, it's probably more of a question for Mr. Kelly. This is something that it's just projected?
This was just an estimate. What I wanted Mr. Bradbury to do was to show the board, since that was your desire, that how you could integrate a 10-year payoff within a 20-year payoff. The 1.5, really, there's $500,000 that includes the software and some of the items that we pulled from the budget this year. The $1 million that's secondary. There's no basis for that right now.
Okay, and our debt service currently is 91 million, and we're going to go to 132 million.
That's correct.
No, that's not right.
I'm
Our
sorry,
current debt is 7.7 million.
71 million, right?
Total
Over
debt
the
or debt
life of the issue.
service?
Right. Oh,
No.
Mr. Mosey asked total debt.
Total debt,
Your total,
71 million
your
right now.
total debt is,
The debt service is 91.
Well, that's what I see here.
Right.
you're looking at total debt service or total?
Total debt.
It's a 91.
We don't have total debt listed here either.
Total
It says-
debt
page
after.
number 6, it says current debt service payable 91,000.
Right, but if you'll see, there's some balances left that you also have to add into that, Pat. Some of them have
Right.
zeroed out, others aren't completely drawn down as
Okay,
of.
but I thought during budget
That's-
time, our debt service was 71 million.
That's principal and
No.
interest.
Right.
That's 91 million is principal and interest.
Plus
Okay.
interest. We were at
Your
107.
current debt, your current debt, taking off 29 million, is approximately $60 million.
Mr. Bradbury, will you give us that in exact numbers, please?
Your
There's been a lot of questions as to exactly
If you
how
would-
much debt is this
if I
district
have,
in?
if you take
Thank
this document here, which I handed out as well, that has draft written on top, in
Right.
red,
Right?
and you go to page A9, in the back section of the
Right?
official statement. Again, the public does not have this. This is a draft that we just completed, but it will be available. It's a draft that is used for selling bonds when the board decides to proceed. It lists each and every bond issue that you have outstanding from the 1990 through the 1994, and the debt that's, the debt, not the debt, not principal and interest, just the
Right.
principal. And you'll see there it lists 90,970,000, but that includes the assumption of the 29,815,000. So your debt is around $61 million.
Again,
62.
I'm going to ask Mrs. Tatum if she would be so kind to take this page A9. It does list the debt. That question comes up on a regular basis here at the district. If the audience of citizens can have that page.
Okay.
This is just principal, though. There should be a page here with the total amortized indebtedness. Isn't that A10, 114 million? Is that not our total debt with
I don't
interest?
have,
I know you're referencing A9, but I think A10 is the number in which Mr. Mosey's,
that includes Montgomery County.
Some overlapping debt.
If you look at the
Yeah.
top, on page A10, if you look at the top part of that, that's the school district's debt. Then you have overlapping debt. Montgomery County, the residents of North Penn School District are liable for about $17 million worth of Montgomery County's debt. And you have municipal indebtedness, Lansdale Borough, Montgomery Township. They all have indebtedness, which is overlapping debt.
okay.
Okay, let's keep this moving.
Well,
Mr. Mosey, you
just
still
one
have
more-
the floor.
Just one more
Right.
question, please. Okay, so our total current debt then is 90,970,000.
That's after issuance of this, after issuance of this issue. 90 million.
The 29 million.
That's correct.
Okay. But I'm asking you to explain to me then, on the right-hand side, I see $132,976,226. Please explain that figure to me.
That's principal and interest. That includes the $90 million that you would have outstanding, plus $42 million worth of interest that you have to pay over the life of those. It's similar to you having a home mortgage where you have, let's say, a $50,000 home mortgage, and your payment is, part of it's for principal and part is for interest.
It's almost 50, okay. That's all I have, Mr. Mangle.
Thank you,
This
Mr.
time,
Moses.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, just to be clear, this draft, this document here will most likely be reviewed by
The document,
Franklin?
the copy I gave to, who was it?
Okay, we're working with two documents here, I'm understanding. You are
That's
the author
correct.
of this
Mr.
document, and Mr.
Mr.
Franklin will
Franklin
be answering
reviewing that
questions on this one.
document. No, I prepared this document.
Prepared
Mr.
what?
Franklin will be reviewing this document. He just
Okay.
received it, it just got completed
Okay,
today, so.
all righty. Thank you, Mr. Bradbury. Mr. Allen, go right ahead.
On page 5 of the financing report, the refunding portion of the current bond.
Yes,
We are not, am I correct when I assume that we are not extending the time period of that bond?
no, if you look at the second to the last column, your existing debt service that you are liable to pay is till the year 2002,
Okay.
and you'll see that we are going to 2002, and we are actually going to the same maturity date on those we would go to the same maturity date, which is September 1 of 2001, which is exactly the same as what is the maturity date for the series of 1991.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Schilling?
Yeah, how are the rates right now? Are we getting a pretty good rate? And are rates for bonds kind of going down or up, or where is it?
Where are they right now?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, they were a little bit lower than they are right now, but they are still substantially lower than they were a month and a half ago.
Do you anticipate them going up before we approve this, or?
I wouldn't be working if I was that good. Do I project it? No, I project that over the next week, they're going to hold fairly stable.
Thank you, that's all the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Schilling. Mrs. Krieger?
Yes, Mr. Bradbury, in regards to the technology portion on page 4, the figure 1.5 million, that figure, who provided you with that actual figure amount?
I did that, I said that earlier. We did that just, I wanted him to be able to show the board, as the board wished, that if we did anything with technology, it would be funded over 10 years, not 20 years, the full life of
I
an
understand that, but I thought the initial figure that was batted around for financing through a bond was $300,000.
Mrs. Krieger, that was strictly for the administrative software. That didn't include those items that we pulled out of current year budget from the schools.
Okay, then what I would like to see provided to the board members in relationship to the technology portion is an itemization of everything that is intended to be paid for in regards to technology if we opt to go for $1.5 million.
That will be done. That is in the process of being done, Mrs. Krieger, with those items that we're aware of at this point.
Okay, thank you. That's all my only questions right now.
Thank you, Mrs. Krieger. Mr. Weitz?
Same topic. Understanding that that 1.5 million was just an example of how we could embed a portion of this bond issue within 20 years and schedule it over 10 years. Mr. Bradbury, you said that, again, with this arbitrary number that was just offered as an example, that you couldn't justify taking technology out 20 years. So let me ask you this question, if you can give us that opinion with this little bit of information. What if the technology portion related only to facilities improvement, such as building modifications, upgrading electrical service, wiring in the buildings as well as between the buildings? Would that justify extending those funds out farther?
I give that to Mr. Franklin because he has to give the legal opinion as to the tax exemption of the bonds.
If you would, please.
You are allowed to finance projects over their useful life under the Pennsylvania borrowing law. So if your auditor or your business office can come up with a useful life of anything you're planning to build, rehabilitate, or improve, then you can finance over that useful life period. So those items you're talking about, if your accountant, for example, would depreciate them on a depreciation scale over 10 years, and you could extend that debt over 20 years, you could extend the debt for that portion of your technology over that additional period of time. So it's just an analysis of useful lives and then identifying dollars over those useful lives.
Okay, and I do understand that the figure was arbitrary and it was just handed you and said technology as that example. Does that mean, Dennis, Mr. Brad, whoever, that we can kind of slice and dice this any way we want, that software that we deemed we were going to get 10 years of use out of, we could put on a 10-year schedule, other pieces we could put on 15, 20-year schedule? Is that available to us as long as we have descriptions of how the monies are going to be spent and our legal advice comes back to us about useful life?
That's correct.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. For those in the audience that didn't hear a proper introduction, you had just heard from our bond counsel, Mr. David Franklin, from the law firm of Pepper, Hamilton and Sheets. He was hired as North Penn's bond counsel earlier this spring. Mr. Hill?
No questions.
Okay, Mr. Shar?
As Finance Liaison, I'd just like to thank everyone for being a bit more creative in arranging to meet the needs of the district as it was described, as it was set forth to you by our administration, by bringing this together into one bond issue with one issuance cost rather than the division that could have occurred with two separate bonds, and still managing to bring forward a amortization that was responsible as far as matching the payment schedule according to the life of the item. I think as David's questions regarding the technology program speaks to that, in that there are different lifespans for different products, and in the past there has been no differential in the borrowing time. Many of us have sat up here and seen some pretty outrageous borrowing programs for very short life items, and it's certainly my concern that we don't do that ever again, at least not while I sit up here or actively support it. What I'd like to ask you is that as I follow this in our debt service program right now, we can anticipate close to a $2 million increase in our debt service payments according to this plan between this year and next year?
That is correct.
So Dennis, we would be looking at 9 mils in increased debt service that we would be having to deal with.
Approximately 9 mils, depending on the value of where our mill goes. I think it will be a little less.
Right, depending on whether we've got a redistribution of spending from somewhere else within our budget, but right
Correct.
now.
I was looking at 8.
Okay.
8 in the first year and an additional 1.3 in the second year, and then remaining relatively stable at that point.
Well, if you have some other financial plan other than what we're gonna see here in dollars, then maybe perhaps when you respond to the other board's request by giving us a more detailed outline of what the intended actual purchasing intent is with the technology dollars, that'll also help each of us as a board to take a look at. If you've only got 500,000 accounted for, then we know there's a $1 million window there in reduction of debt.
Correct, and I wouldn't tell the board to go with anything else in technology until we do get some type of plan. You know, I think I've sat here just in the 5 years that I've been here, and it's really no one's fault. It's just the way that the technology program has gone, where people have done things that are of interest to them. I think what we need to do is establish a plan and make sure that all our purchases are geared to that plan.
Okay, and as the rest of this, with the Pendale project, we're throwing 2.6 million, a little bit more than that, 6.5 million. The last report we had was calling for about $1.5 million to have to be borrowed to clear that debt, when you took into consideration the other funding that was available to us. Can you explain why the
The
difference now?
2.6, that includes some of the other items that Mr. Wood wanted to do, both at Pembroke and Penfield. We will also itemize those. We will itemize those for you.
Okay,
exactly what they are.
can we get some sub-level breakdowns of this so that we know what is being provided for?
Most definitely. As I
So
told-
that we know what we're not going to be facing in
That's-
future borrowing?
That's what we plan to do, Mr. Shower. As I said, the next bond issue that we ever did here at North Penn, there will be a monthly project-by-project accounting to this board, showing beginning balances for everything, what we spent up to date, and what the free balance is.
Okay, Mr. Bradbury, just to back up, and then my next question after that will be to Dennis again. I hate to leave you standing up there. The $132.9 million, that's listed on page 6?
That's correct, yes.
That is the bottom line total indebtedness as amortized with interest?
That is
With
correct.
this bond issue?
That's an estimate, that's an estimate at
That's
this point.
your estimate given the interest rates?
That's
That
correct.
you've assumed? Okay, and that would be the total as paid out with a zero balance? We'd have a zero drawdown at the end of that period?
You would be debt-free at that period.
At the year
Do nothing else.
2017? Okay, I think that's where Mr. Mosey was wondering between the difference of what our total debt was.
Yeah, I
and the
just wanted to see
confusion.
I wanted to just see, what
Right,
the
the
increase is
total-
going to be. We're talking about 29 million. We're really looking at a $42 million increase here,
Well, this one here on page
or
6,
41 million.
on page 6, Pat, is
Right.
the figure that includes the interest being amortized out into the plan.
I know
So in
that.
other words, unless we're paying it off tomorrow, which we won't be doing,
I understand
this
that.
is where we would be.
I understand that. I think perhaps what my question was, and maybe I didn't phrase it properly, and I hate to infringe upon your time, but if I may take a minute just to explain myself a little more clearly. We have a current bond, so I was trying to find out what our current debt service is. It's the 91 million.
It's 91, that's including the 29 million.
Okay. All right, so,
He's,
Isn't that included?
go ahead, Mr. Bradbury, go ahead.
91, the 90, are you
on
looking at page?
six. Page 6.
Page 6?
Bradbury, yeah.
Page 6, that is your current debt service payable.
Does that include the
That
29
includes,
million?
no.
This is what our debt service is today,
Column
not borrowing
one,
the 29 million?
column 1 is your current debt service payable,
Okay.
principal and interest.
Okay, and if we borrow the 29 million, you're estimating, including principal and interest, our debt service will go to 132 million, the last column.
That's correct.
Am I correct?
That's correct.
Over the number of
That's
years.
debt service.
Over the
Over the
I
life.
understand that, but I'm just trying to relate to the public, because I've been members of the audience, and there's always been a question about what our total debt service is, and I think this is a good time to find out just where we're at and where we're going, so the general public, as well as myself as a board member, has a general understanding. I'm not an accountant, I'm not a bond counsel, I'm just an ordinary, citizen and a board member, and I'm just trying to understand where we at and where we are in debt service in this community.
Mr.
school district.
Bradbury,
Pat,
this
so
is the
someone-
place to do it, and that's fine,
Right.
absolutely. Mr. Sher, I know you have
Yeah.
more questions.
And since I'm a layman here, I think Pat can understand. Debt service is a term that's for your annual payments.
I know that.
Okay, so our annual
I
payment.
want to know what our annual payment's going to be, and if we borrow the $29 million, what is our annual payment going to go to?
Okay, right, that's what I asked with my first
What's
question.
page number?
7.761 million, you see the page 6, first column, current debt service?
Yes,
It's 7.7 million there.
yes.
And with the borrowing, if we were to move forward with this, the estimated debt service, having borrowed that funding for the first year,
Will go to-
97, 98, will be 9.6 million.
Okay.
That's where I said that we could anticipate close to a $2 million increase
Right.
in our annual payment.
That's what I'm
And that
asking.
would be approximately 9 mils.
So we're now
And Dennis
paying
interrupts me.
7.7 million, and next year's budget, we're going to have to pay 9.6.
Right,
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
okay.
Mr. Sher, continue on with your questions.
Sure. All I
Sorry
would
for
like
the
to ask
interruption.
is.
Thank you.
That's okay. Dennis, what is our current investment rate? What is the value to us as far as interest on it? If we were to invest?
It's ranged anywhere, Mr. Sharp, from 5.31 to 5.7, depending on the length of the term of the investment.
So,
In the short term, it's 5.3. The long term, it's been about 5.7.
So at
That's been
worst-
my high so far this year.
so what I could, then, if I understand this, $1.5 million out of our pocket today to pay money on the table for something, we'd be at a borrowing rate of 4%, which seems to be the average number we're working with here,
That's higher
correct?
than,
Right.
it's higher than that when you put it in the total picture.
In our loan,
But I might,
in borrowing.
before you start looking at the fact that you can invest it at a higher rate, I think Mr. Franklin can tell you that you can't legally invest it at a higher rate.
No, I realize that.
Okay.
I'm not talking about
Okay.
arbitrage. I'm not talking about arbitrage, but I'm talking from the perspective of us as a district, just as we as individuals will go out and weigh, what is the mean value of that money to you?
Okay,
Okay.
it's probably when you take the technology into account, the technology portion probably has an average interest rate of about 4.70.
Okay.
And the construction portion probably has an average interest rate because of the way it's weighted about 5.5%.
Okay, 5.5% borrowing rate,
That's for the construction portion.
sure. No, I'm sorry, I didn't want to scare you there. No.
Is that related to the
I'm
term?
just thinking of the mean value.
That's related to the
Well,
term, yeah, the
okay.
20-year term has a higher
It's in our
average
March.
Just make sure,
coupon.
thank you.
Is that it, Mrs. Sherman?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Kelly, you are desiring not only a meeting on next Thursday with the
I'm sorry,
finance team,
this
but
Thursday.
this Thursday with the finance team, but you are looking for board action by next Thursday, the
19th.
19th.
That's
Is that what you're
correct.
seeking?
That's correct.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, I can probably assure you that there will not be 5 votes for what you wish if you do not provide shortly the construction list, the breakdown of what that 18 million will be spent on, the list requested by Mrs. Krieger and Mr. Whites in the area of technology. I don't believe there's 5 votes for this issue.
Well, that's
We do
fine.
not have that paperwork.
Well, one of my questions this evening dealt with the administrative software,
Okay.
whether that was to be included in this bond issue or not. That was one, and I was hoping to reach some sort of consensus on what to include in and what not to include in.
Well, I don't think the board's going to say yes over here to $300,000 till they see the entire breakout. If I were you, I
Oh,
would put everything
okay.
on the list and get it out to this board as quickly as possible.
That's fine. That will, when we meet on Thursday, that will be out to you on Friday.
I don't think Mr. Kelly can do that for technology at all. I don't think that's within his purview at all. I mean, we have not even gotten to the discussion about technology or its phases or its implementation or what
Okay,
the
David,
board desires.
Well,
I don't know
but
how
there's
we do
They're
that.
already in here for 1.5
No,
million.
no,
There are certain
he
areas.
said that was an arbitrary figure as a placeholder, as an example, to show us how we could schedule technology funds over a 10-year period within a
Okay.
20-year bond.
Right.
Okay.
Those areas, there are specific items, Mr. White's, in there. There were
Well, I
items.
understand that, but still, the figure itself is arbitrary. There are some items that you can specifically list, but for the most part, there's been no discussion about what $1 million, for example, could be used for. And certainly, there is no list for $1 million. We don't even know what it is that we plan to do with
Right.
those funds. Again, I took it at face value. It was an arbitrary figure with maybe a single item in there that
That's correct.
that we had discussed before.
As I said
Okay,
earlier,
that's-
I would
wait.
never advise this
All right.
board to go ahead with anything until a plan or some type of.
Okay, there are more blank
something is
spaces in the area of technology, and that's acknowledged, but there are details, and they're not here tonight, and we want them as soon as possible. We do have more details in the area of the construction costs, the construction program, and we need those as quickly as possible, especially the wish to do some spending in Penfield and Pembroke. I know most of the board members realize that the labs were going to cost approximately $90,000. If there's more than that, we need to know what it is.
And that's fine. I'll work with
Okay.
Mr. Wood and we'll
And it's
get
just a matter of getting that
to the
out,
board.
you've promised it, and we have to have it, and I think if we don't have it, the vote won't be there to approve the issue. Gentlemen, there's always been, I think this is your first bond issue with us, and we have new counsel, we have new bond counsel, we have new finance advisement, and there's always been questions as to how things operated in the past. I need to ask you both in public, is there a referral fee that either one of you will be paying to anybody in light of the work that you're doing with the North Penn School District?
No.
Mr. Bradbury, no? Mr. Franklin?
Absolutely not.
Okay, I thank you for a new way of doing business with this district. Solicitor, I thank you for doing likewise. It's a first around here. No referral fee. Okay.
Ms. O'Reilly, can I
Yes.
just, a point of clarification? I'm a little confused with this arbitrary number. I believe that there was a very specific number that was talked about in regards to financing for technology, that being $300,000. Okay, $700,000 more, $750,000 more, it goes a little bit beyond arbitrary. So unless there is an exact wish list that goes along with that extra $750,000, if there isn't, then there's no point in us financing.
Can I ask
At this
Dennis,
And that's
in the
correct,
budget?
you're correct, Mrs. Krieger, and there won't be. The technology items that you'll see are those items that, they're hard items, they're
Okay.
actual items.
And they add up to $1.5 million?
There will be a definitive list,
Thank
as
you.
I told the
And they add
board.
up to $1.5 million?
No, they don't add that, they'll add up to about $500,000 between the software and those items from the school budgets.
If you recall, Don, there was a line items out of the budget which were moved from the budget to be taken through a bond issue, given if it would have a shorter lifespan than 20 years, in other words,
Right.
one that was amortized. That would be the additional money. I think, Dennis, what you do need to do is identify for us the hard numbers versus the very soft numbers, and whatever's out there that doesn't have a tangible item attached to it, then we as a board have further
Mrs. Krieger, we
discussion.
still have
After Thursday.
Night. We still have next Tuesday. So we have time. This will not go undiscussed. There's time. Let's let Mr. Kelly come forward with what he does have in hard copy.
Thank
Okay,
you.
ladies
Would you
and
like to
gentlemen,
join us?
thank you. Thank you. We need to move on. Gentlemen, thank you.
Oh.
Mr. Bradbury?
Mr. Franklin can explain, I think, you want to just explain the steps that will have to take place should you...
Please do.
We need to process.
I'm sorry.
I'll try to be brief, and maybe I should touch on what was just discussed about the technology financing. You are allowed to borrow on a tax-exempt basis for projects that you believe you're going to go forward with. And the way that has been brought into focus is that the tax rules say that you must have reasonable expectations, that's a term of art, to spend 85% of the proceeds within 3 years from the date of the borrowing, or 5 years if you have an extensive capital program. But in other words, you don't have to have the particularity that you probably as a board want to have with respect to the technology equipment for purposes of borrowing the money. What you're doing here is borrowing money for technology equipment that you have an idea of what you want to spend. You have some hard ideas and you have some soft ideas. What I'm suggesting is that if you add dollars to this bond issue for technology equipment, you may do that, provided that you have those reasonable expectations I just mentioned. And by doing that, what you're doing is tying in the financing of that equipment to this bond issue, and thereby putting it into one financing and probably saving some financing expense. But I'm not advocating you do anything other than finance what you know as a fact you want. I'm just telling you that those are the rules that are applied if you're going to finance equipment, technology equipment, that is not exactly specifically identified and a dollar cost attributed to it. So in other words, if you have $500,000 of hard items and you anticipate that there are some other things you know you're probably going to borrow you're going to buy within the next 3 years and have some idea of what that cost is, you could add that soft cost to the bond issue. But there are rules that beyond which you can't go. So I just wanted to comment on that as you consider what you're going to add to this bond issue.
Mrs. Mingle, question in that regard.
Yeah.
We do have to be specific then as to what we are borrowing the money for.
No, you have to have reasonable expectations that you're going to undertake those things which you expect to borrow the money for.
But the board could still vote to spend that money on something else.
The board can elect to do that.
Because that has happened in the past, and I think we had discussions about that.
We can draft this to be stipulated as tightly as we
Yeah.
wish it to be.
There will be a
Absolutely.
budget attached to this prospectus.
Right,
I
right.
thank you.
Correct.
Okay. Now, the only other thing I was asked to comment on was the procedure that we're going to follow. You're going to meet on the 19th,
Correct.
and at that point, you will have before you a resolution which as your counsel, we will have advertised a summary of in the local newspaper as you are required to do. And a copy of that resolution will be available at the administrative offices. Now, that will be a draft resolution.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Yeah.
President.
That's all right. That will be a draft resolution which you will have the opportunity to review. Mr. Barlow will absolutely review, and that the public will have a chance to take a look at it. It's a rather technical document. On the night of the 19th, Mr. Bradbury will come in with a specific bid for a specific amount of bonds, which he will agree to buy from you that night and he will explain at that night the terms, the interest rates, the redemption features, and that sort of a thing. So if you adopt that resolution, the resolution will award the bonds to Mr. Bradbury's firm in accordance with his proposal. It will authorize me to undertake all of the necessary legal steps to get the approval of the Department of Economic and Community Development and to go to settlement and allow you to issue the bonds and receive the proceeds of the bond issue. That process takes approximately 30 to 45 days after the 19th. We'll have to advertise a second time that you've adopted a resolution if in fact you do go forward. We will have to explain in that second advertisement any changes that were made, size of issue, the insertion of the interest rates, which won't be known until probably Tuesday before Thursday the 19th, and any other things that may have been changed at the discretion of the school district on the 19th. And then we'll move forward to file documents with the Department of Community and Economic Development, and they have 20 days to decide whether to approve your proceedings. They'll determine whether your proceedings are in accordance with the statute that permits you to borrow money, and then we'll be able to go to settlement. You will deliver your bonds. I will deliver my legal opinion to Mr. Bradbury. Mr. Bradbury will give you the proceeds of the bond issue. So that's the procedure which will be followed after the 19th. We will conclude the procedure within 30 to 45 days. Does anybody have any questions?
2 points. In the past, it's been very, very difficult to get our hands on not the estimated, the actual settlement sheet from the table when all signatures are done and over with. This board wants that sheet, and we want copies made available to every board member, not just to Mr. Kelly. Every board member wants that settlement sheet, not the estimated sheet.
My clients always get the settlement sheet.
Then you do good business then. And also, I know that this board wishes not to have broad boilerplate language in the thank you, in the resolution. I believe this board, or at least a majority of this board, does want a spending death grip on the current board, future boards, and administration that will be a part of handling those monies. So I know that Solicitor Bartle is aware of how the majority of this board thinks and feels on that very issue. I know Mr. Kelly is most intimate in knowing how we feel about that. So I think if you're looking at past resolutions and issues, that's not the way we want them to read anymore.
No, my resolution will be available to you. I will expect Mr. Bartle to look at it, and I'll be consulting with him about it. And as late as the 19th, if at that time any member of this board or the board as a board would like something changed in that resolution, the statute that allows you to borrow money allows you to make changes to that resolution up until the time you adopt it. And that's why the second advertisement is required, so that the public will be informed of any changes you made to that resolution.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Franklin. Mr. Mosey,
Mr. Franklin,
yes, there's more questions.
Mr. Franklin, before you leave, would you repeat for me again who helps us determine such things as useful life of an item that goes into a bond issue, or issues such as capital items versus expense items?
Usually what I do when questions like that are raised from time to time in school building projects. Some school boards, for example, have refenestrated their buildings, or some have simply painted all of their classrooms. Is painting classrooms a capital item? Does that capital item, if it is a capital item, what is its useful life? Right. I've always told the board that they should consult with their auditor, their accountant, and determine from him, A, whether he and the financial statements of the school district will treat it as a capital item, and B, what useful life would he recommend be given to it. And usually they refer to the standard list of depreciable lives that accountants use, and use that as a source of reference.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mosey, you had another question?
Just one quick question, Mr. Franklin. When would we lock in the interest rate?
On the 19th, excuse me, the
As soon as we
19th.
give you the go-ahead, that would be
That's right.
an interest rate that would be the 20th then.
Wait, no.
No.
The interest rates will be locked in, the beginning of next week, we will start pre-marketing of the issue to come up with what the interest rates will be on the 19th. As I said, I will give them to you the Tuesday before the Thursday, which is next 17th. You will receive the interest rates so that you as a board have the opportunity to review everything, and I'll have it more detailed than this, that you as a board will have everything in your hand, including our bond purchase proposal, which Mr. Bartle will have in his hand, have the opportunity to review, and Mr. Franklin will have the opportunity to review.
Colleagues, I double-checked with the solicitor while the presentation was going on as to whether we needed 5 affirmative votes or whether we needed 2/3 vote on an issue like this. Solicitor? It's 5.
5 affirmative votes under Section 508 of the school code requires 5 affirmative votes of the board to create or increase an indebtedness.
Okay, so you all know that. Because I know this is the first bond for, gosh, most of you. So that's important information. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate your services. And Mrs. Tatum, a special thank you for your rapid response to this board and providing the community with that information. Okay, board policies. Dr. Bose or Mr. Hill? Mr. Hill.
I'll take it.
Okay.
It'll be brief. We have 2 policies that we want to bring forward at the next action meeting for approval by the board. One policy is related to formalizing the method we've been using in the past. There's never been a policy regarding affirming that the employees are not permanent employees of the district until the board votes on them. And all this policy does is put in clear writing what we have done in the past, but to make it clear that an employee does not become a permanent employee until the board votes on it. The second policy is a policy that's going to all of the boards that send students to the North Monaco Technical Center, and it pertains to the placement of students from the alternative school programs to the North Monaco Technical Career Center. And it's a general policy that is going to be adapted across, as they say, to all sending schools to clarify the alternative school students' activities. Are there any questions regarding these 2 policies?
Okay, let's start to the right, Mrs. Sharp.
Quick one, Don. In no way is this any movement towards classifying the students enrolled at the North Monaco as alternative students, but rather it's a procedure that's being put in place for their introduction from an alternative school into North Monaco VOTEC. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I don't want anyone to begin to think that we're moving in the opposite direction that we've been moving forward, which is to eliminate the stigmatism that's...
No, placed it back in.
And it's just a matter of setting out a process that will have to be followed as they shift into the mainstream education.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very
Mr.
much.
Hill, if I may, please. I believe Mr. Mosey is signaling me that we have different policy numbers. Is that what you're telling me? We have policy number 4112 on the actual statement, whereas the agenda for tonight lists policy 4117. Obviously, they are not both correct numbers, and we will make sure that's corrected. I believe policy 4112 is the correct number. We'll make sure that the agenda and the policy agree for the subsequent meeting. We apologize for that.
Thank you.
That's a good point, because even though we're taking no votes tonight, Mr. Mosey, that's important.
Well, we already have another policy, that number
That
in
number,
place.
correct. Okay, Mrs. Krieger.
I'm just curious, do we have any alternative school children from our district at North Monaco at the present time, Judy? think we have two at the present time, but this is really speaking to when we have students coming back from alternative ed that we're considering a North Monco placement. It's a procedural thing.
Okay.
So that children aren't just showing up there and
I see.
expecting to have a schedule. There has to be some transition, and that's what this is.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Schilling?
No question.
Mr. Allen?
Yeah, on the 4112, the employment procedure. If we can go to the second sentence of the second paragraph. I guess if I can, I'm trying to understand what we're saying there. I'm good.
You are good.
You've got the rest of us in the weeds now, Mr. Allen. Mr. Bartle, would you respond to Mr. Allen and pull him out of the weeds? I'm sorry.
Second
Second
sentence of
paragraph,
the
second
second
sentence.
paragraph.
Of Policy 4112.
What was the question?
What does it mean? I guess what it seems to mean to me is that we hire, that the personnel department hires someone and they're considered temporary until we vote.
If they start to work before the effective date of your appointment.
Yeah, I think essentially that's it. I think this is a sentence that is placed in here with reference to professional employees starting prior to the effective date of your appointment. And what it says is the effective date of all board appointments will be part of the minutes of the board. Of course, that's required. And no appointment will be retroactive to a date prior to the date of formal action unless the motion adopted by a majority of all directors in accordance with Section 508 of the School Code shall expressly so provide, and the minutes shall expressly reflect that retroactive appointment. In other words, there's been some discussion with respect to people starting, and then subsequently the motion of the board comes. And what we wanted to make clear here is that it will be your procedure that the evening upon which you act will be the effective date of employment unless you so direct in the motion to the contrary.
In other words, unless we know it's a ratification.
Is that-
Unless
No,
you know.
we would need to
In
know.
other
It
words,
doesn't.
if we need to hire someone and we need them to start before the board meets,
Right.
that person can in fact work here and get paid as a substitute. I don't know if this is just for, well, professional and serves, anybody will be paid as a substitute.
Temporary or
Or
substitute.
temporary.
Or substitute.
Okay, and then when we vote on that, assuming we approve that person, then they are considered a permanent employee. And my question is, or I guess my comment or question is, should they not be considered permanent employees from the day they started work as far as pay and benefits?
This motion does not address that issue. This particular sentence. What this sentence essentially says is that if you are hiring someone as of a given date, which given date is prior to the action of the board, then at the time the board takes its action, its motion will recite the time period at which that hiring is effective. In other words, what date it is effective. And if it is prior to the action of the board, it'll state the specific date in your motion. It's an attempt to allow the board to be made aware of how long a period of time that employee has been working in that capacity prior to the time that you enacted on that particular night, or prior to the time that you voted on that particular night.
Okay, but I'm trying to understand if I've understood what I've heard some people in this board say, they don't want to have to ratify anybody's employment. Am I understanding this correctly?
What this provision says, I'm sorry, Don, but what this says is that there is no requirement that you hire anybody pursuant to this particular sentence. What it says is, in the event that you do, the date that this board takes action will be the date of hire, unless the motion says to the contrary. In other words, it's an opportunity to provide the board with additional information, so you'll know if this is going to be a ratification of a prior employment date, the motion will have to so state and state the date
Okay.
that it's ratified from.
Let me speak to
I guess-
Bill's question is, the purpose of this policy and the purpose all along is to ratify, not to hire before we ratify. And that's, the administration is working towards that and not, and when we ratify, or when we vote on a new employee, the new employee starts work after the date that we vote on. There are occasions, there are circumstances that means we must hire an employee to fill a position. That becomes, it has to be filled immediately before the board can take action. So this paragraph or this sentence gives that lateral movement in there so the board can, on occasion, ratify somebody starting an earlier date.
An example would be.
I understand what you're saying. I guess maybe I'm saying what's different in the past. Yes, we always ratify, nobody ever questions it.
Because in the past, we had people here 3 months and we didn't know it, and then they
Yeah,
came up for
that's right.
ratification. There was something the matter with that.
This is
3 months is, yes,
That's a little too much.
I agree.
Right.
We had a lot of, okay.
This is more tidy, and this is a more efficient way of handling personnel. Mr. Mosey?
Thank you.
No question.
Okay, thank you. Questions around? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for audience of citizens. I thank you for being patient and patient with this board and those that were presenting. Those that wish to speak on matters of enrollment, bonds, or the board policies that were discussed here and read this evening in its first reading, please come forward, give us your name and address.
Those matters only.
Those matters only. Anybody?
Hi, my name's Linda Barron from Talmadge Township. My son is a 5th grader at Inglewood. First of all, thank you to Mrs. Krieger for bringing class size to the board's attention again. She's right about not needing a teacher. A 5th grade teacher was moved to replace a 6th grade teacher that was moved to another school. As part of the original group of parents who signed the petition presented to the board in June, I would like to say we are just as concerned today about our rising numbers, in fact, even more so. We have children jammed into a classroom that cannot accommodate 31 students. When a child has to leave the classroom, a whole row of students has to move to let him out. These children and parents are worried about what would happen if there was a fire. 10-year-olds shouldn't have to be worried about that. Once again, one of my concerns is the math groups that are now in place, which do not benefit the children as in past years. Also, there is not enough room for the children to learn the hands-on science lessons they have come to enjoy. How can projects the students worked so hard on be displayed? For instance, 20-something solar systems barely fit last year. 30-some projects will take up much more room. Does this mean projects, reports, etc. will have to be kept to a minimum due to lack of space? Dr. Bose, what other elementary schools are in the position of numbers being so much higher than class size guidelines?
Eight other sections of students.
We know our third day enrollment numbers are right. These kids are actually there. What will happen at the 10th day enrollment as these numbers stay the same? The 10th day is September 18th, am I correct? That's the
Yes.
10th day?
That's
And there's a board meeting the 19th?
That's correct.
Will something be done at that time?
I think you also heard Mrs. Krieger say that proposals with options have already been presented to the board, and I will follow through with a specific set of recommendations when we have those more reliable numbers.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Mrs. Spire, thank you very much. Is there anybody else, please? Mrs. Spire?
Connie Spire, Upper Gwinnett Township. I'm also concerned about the class sizes. My daughter is in a class of 29, which I think is excessive. Desks are all touching each other, which I think might make test-taking interesting. The ability to work in small groups decreases. I see us moving in the district towards more towards inclusionary practices. and I see the board facing their fiscal responsibilities with increasing class size. And what this means is we're looking at wider and wider spans in intellectual ability in one class, and we're looking at wider or larger class sizes, and the two don't mix. And I think that the administration and the board has to get together and decide which one is more important. And if it's the fiscal responsibility with the larger class sizes, then we need to start looking at disability grouping and forget more about this inclusionary practice and that type of idea. I will be looking at the 10th day enrollment also, and I'm looking forward to seeing maybe some action taken here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Spire. Anybody else, please? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We're going to move on to long-range plan, and Dr. Mangano, are you ready?
Yes, Mrs. Mankel, I am. Purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide the board and the community with a presentation question session to review the 4 action team plans. These include tonight diversity, special education, student life, and community partnerships. The co-chairs of each of the teams have met with me to review the plans relative to cost. As outlined in your packet that you received on September 6th, the financial picture is getting us closer to the fiscal responsibility that the board and the planning team have determined as a priority. To reach that end, the following revisions have been made. Number 1, removing the cost dedicated to the already approved high school addition at $18 million. Number 2, deleting the cost to build a new elementary school of $12 million. The facilities report that will be given later on this week will further delineate their plan to accommodate enrollment expansion. That'll be Thursday evening. Number 3, implementing a technology plan in 2 phases. The technology plan will also be explained on Thursday evening. Taking technology equipment expenditures out of the operating cost to be considered under bond fund monies, and using the current operating budget for curriculum development and staff development, and reprioritizing these funds to meet the 1997-98 needs of the long-range plan. The second draft of the plan which you received has been edited accordingly and reflects these revisions. The long-range plan will be further revised according to the considerations and recommendations of tonight's and other work sessions scheduled for September 12th and September 17th. The Planning Committee will meet on September 11th and September 18th to review all of the revisions before final board adoption on September 19th. It is the responsibility of that planning committee to ultimately consider all of the long-range plans in terms of the parameters and the objectives that have been determined and reissued by this board. I want to remind the board and the community that this is a plan to plan, and only 3 components of the plan are required to be submitted to the state: curriculum and instruction, staff development, and assessment. Because the Chapter 5 expectations are currently in revision and will not be available until the end of October for preview, nor are they expected to be passed by the legislature until after the first of the year, it will be important for all of us to understand the impact of these revisions in all aspects of the plan. There will need to be ongoing conversations between the board and the planning committee to understand what is required and what will be needed to meet the revised expectations. The important work of the facilities and technology action teams should continue to be considered relative to current and future bond issues and current district needs. It will be necessary to take time to study the impact of their recommendations. Tonight I would like to begin the review with the Diversity Action Team, followed by Special Education, Student Life, and Community Partnerships. I would ask for the co-chairs of the Diversity Action Team to please come up. Marianne Caltabiano-Kemmer and Rosalind Hopkins are here representing the Diversity Action Team.
Dr. Mangano, thank you very much. And before your kind presenters bring forward diversity, we need to take care of a few housekeeping items here with the board. Ladies and gentlemen, the board, there is a desire to have a board meeting the 12th, this Thursday night. You were all asked to keep that open on your calendar. Thursday night is also the first home football game here in the district. And as you well know, many parents, many faculty members, and probably our very new principal at the high school will be attending that game. We still wish to hold that meeting time on Thursday because we want to handle facilities and enrollment and also technology on that evening. I am looking for the board's wish and a consensus as to whether we start that meeting at 6:30, 7, or 7:30. in order that hopefully as many folks as possible can get themselves to the football game, the first game of the year if they so wish, and also to accommodate parent schedules with kids that not only play football but are in the band, etc. So if there is a wish and a preference, let's try and pull 5, and let's take care of that now while we have an audience here and they will know what time to come back. Mr. Mosey, you have a preference?
What time does the football game start?
8 o'clock.
7:30.
Yeah, 7:30 would
7:30?
work.
7:30? 7:30.
I think at that, we should have a 6
You're gonna
o'clock
go through
meeting.
facilities.
We doing go 6, Mr. Mosey?
I'm like,
Mr. Allen?
we'll just be getting started.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please,
Whatever.
Mr. Allen, 6, Mr. Schilling.
Fine.
We've got 3, Mrs. Krieger, preference?
Mrs. Mango, I won't be here on Thursday, and I informed the board of that last week.
Okay.
In light of our budget, our bond presentation this evening, I would like this board to, and since you're recommending a 6 o'clock start time, am I correct? 6 o'clock?
6, 6:30, 7, the board's wish, you're looking for a
I'd like
consensus.
to know how this board is gonna get through facilities and technology on Thursday night in an hour and a half.
They might not, that's why we're gonna come back on Tuesday night.
Well, then I
and
would
there's
like the board
Thursday
to,
night.
I would like the board to delay technology until I can be here.
Mr. White,
As late as 7:30.
you need 7:30. Mr. Hill,
I won't be available Thursday.
Mrs. Scher.
Only deferring, if anyone expects to make the game, 7:30 is only a half hour in between. You couldn't even come here and get back. So I would manage an earlier time, if that's the wish.
6 o'clock?
For Dr. Bose also, I think.
4 would be
probably
6
wanna
o'clock,
a
I can make
participant.
6 o'clock since 4 of you can. Mr. Clemens was open to any time that the board wishes. He would like to attend that football game, and he's going to attempt to attend that football game. So 6 o'clock it is on Thursday evening.
Shall we assume that we'll have a 7:30 close on that
Or
meeting?
an attempt to do that.
Or close to it?
An attempt to do that. But it's an opportunity to have some meeting time, and whatever documents will be necessary for Thursday night, please make sure that board members Krieger and Hill have those since they won't be in attendance. That was one. What else do we have?
That's okay.
Okay, Dr. Mangano, there was, board members had called this week and contacted me that they enjoyed the presentations that were made available to us last week, but there's a wish that many of the questions directed by the board be answered large in part by yourself. Recognizing that both presenters here tonight are members of the community, Dr. Kimmerer is no longer on our payroll, that a greater sense of accountability lies at your feet. And so I believe the majority, or a good majority of the board members, want to hear more direct answers from you as questions come from the board. Okay.
I'll start with an opening statement.
Certainly.
Good evening, my name is Rosalind Hopkins, co-chairperson of the Diversity Committee. I would just like to take this opportunity to thank the school board for putting diversity at the forefront of our mission for the long-range plan. Thank you.
And I would just like to mention that the diversity, the plan that has been outlined by the community and the members of the school district is a plan that will be infused into already existing curriculum. I think that's an important part to know. I was not able to be here in August when Rosalind beautifully presented an outline of the plan, but I think that's an important aspect of this plan, and I'm very delighted to be here to see the work of this committee to fruition with this presentation and answer session this evening. And we now will entertain any questions that you may have about the diversity plan.
Okay, we'll start to the right. Mrs. Scher.
No, I'd like to defer to the...
Absolutely. Mr. Hill?
I don't have any specific questions related to this, other than as I reviewed this, I think there's a lot of good things in here, and I think a lot of them are implemented without any direct cost to the district. And has to get involved in the plan each year, but I have no specific questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Mr. White?
I have no specific questions. I think this just carries on the work that is incorporated from our guidance curriculum, where we've talked about those values. This continues that, expands on that, and is certainly, as you mentioned, an integral part and in the forefront of our mission statement for this strategic plan.
Thank you, Mr. Weitz. Mrs. Krieger?
No questions.
Mr. Schilling?
No specific questions.
Mr. Allen?
No questions, but a comment that just, this is one of those items in the long-range plan that is more a matter of attitude and effort than it is cost. And I just think it's something that has to be addressed and reminded on an ongoing basis.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Mosey?
No questions.
Okay, I just have one question, Dr. Mangano. Whether it was timely or not, there was a large article in this morning's North Penn Reporter, and if the reporter can be trusted for coverage, they outlined the story of the diversity section of the strategic plan in Wissahickon. Comments were very interesting. Debate was very interesting. Can you help me with how North Penn's plan is different from Wissahickon?
I can, and I can be very specific about it because on several occasions, the Wissahickon School District Strategic Planning Committee asked me to give input to the direction of where they were going with their diversity plan. So I attended some of their meetings, and I do have their plan, and I'm able to draw the differences between their plan and our plan. To that end, probably the most significant thing is the definition that we have used for diversity as opposed to the definition that the Wissahickon School District has used for diversity. And if I might reiterate that for a moment, very clearly our definition for diversity is that diversity is a mosaic of people who bring a variety of backgrounds and styles, perspectives, values, and beliefs as assets to the groups and organizations with which they interact. I think the definition, by virtue of what Wissahickon put in, was relative to human differences affecting a person or group's sense of identity and or regard for actions toward individuals and or groups. The diversity and unity action plans are concerned with, and although not limited to, fostering understanding and appreciation of aspects of diversity which include race, gender, age, religion, ethnicity, ability, disability, social economic status, and non-traditional families. Basically, the key thing that they started with was a definition that was different from ours. A second item that I noticed in terms of the difference was that, and I think, Mr. Allen, you said this a few minutes ago, our diversity initiatives have been in place since 1991. If you recall, in 1998, I was given the task by the superintendent and the board at that time to do a study for this community and this district to put in place a plan based on research as to where we were in this district, kind of at the forefront of multicultural education before it really became an issue. And we have had a task force initiative in this district since 1991. So we are ongoing with things that are already in place. Third, we already have policies in place that have been approved by our school board over many years regarding practices about teaching and learning and the differences between what is teaching and is learning and what is the differences between practice. And we are very specific about that in our policies and our expectations for teachers in the classrooms. We also have policies on how to handle the holidays already established and approved by our board. We have adopted a policy that already uses curriculum infusion and inclusion. We already support good practices in our curriculum. So we were building on a foundation of good curriculum, good strategic planning, good strategies that were already infused in our staff development models, and we built upon those. I believe the other key thing is that this board approved a vision and a mission statement and universal values already reflecting that of diversity. That's already been a proven item, and you did that very early on. One area in which there is some similarity is the concept of using conflict resolution. And one of the reasons that this particular action team, along with several others, felt that that was important is because that it is part of the standards and expectations that the state has said is important in terms of citizenship. It is under that particular expectation, which asks us to look at having students demonstrate skills of communicating, negotiating, and cooperating. And so the teams have put in place to look at and review a conflict resolution program. So that is a similarity between the two plans. Our plan goes further in that we have integrated school to work, we have integrated community involvement and partnerships. So we seem to have more of a mature, established focus in terms of our intent toward diversity.
Okay. Again, thank you, Mrs. Scher. You deferred. Can we come back, or do you have no question?
I'd just like to ask, though, are there any of the initiatives that I had discussed regarding just perhaps an internal mentorship or referral with our Pupil Services Department? If you remember, Sandy, I suggested that if we even had a list of certain community groups like the Indo-American Club or all the other groups that to where people that are enrolling their students, that perhaps it would be beneficial just for them to have a listing for them independently, to perhaps link up with someone that could be beneficial to them, as well as maybe perhaps taking a volunteer listing of not necessarily in line with their cultural background, but rather someone that can assist the families that are coming in by being there to answer their questions or helping them adjust to American life.
We've done a lot of that, particularly with the ESL program, and we do have brochures and publications that we have put for families that come into the community with various languages that are more common among the people who are coming in. But through their plan, we're also looking at including more of that with community partnerships and community support and more integration, particularly with the area that Judy gets to see a lot.
I think I'm talking something similar to what we have in place for ESL, but it's
Yes.
something that we've developed that can be
Expand
there
it. It certainly
for
can be
those as they
expanded.
enroll. And that may be a way to address it without having to put a lot of resources into it
I
necessarily.
really do feel that, Mr.
Is
Scher,
it-
that is in the body of this
Okay.
as far as the community resources. We did look at establishing a database as one of the plans.
Okay.
And one of the steps, an action step in the plan. And I think that kind of database can be as broad or as narrow as people that would volunteer to be available for students or for community members. And that is in the body of this plan.
Okay, I just
It's
know
a great idea.
how important that is for people that have come into this country, that if they're struggling on their own, just to have a phone number that's sort of an assigned helper out there in this community, just to answer questions can take a tremendous amount of pressure and stress and make the transition a lot easier. I just wanted to. Okay, so it's there. Thank you.
Okay, ladies, thank you very much. Dr. Mangano, thank you. And ladies, this board recognizes that you are busy women, and we thank you for your volunteer service.
Okay, we're moving right along, and we're going to move very quickly to the next action team, and that would be the action team of special education. And we have a trio coming forward tonight. Denise Fagan, Mitch Edmonds, and Fred Donaldson, who is our community representative for our special education team.
Thank you. While they're setting up, student cameraman, how are we for time? Somebody help me? How many?
25 minutes.
Okay. You'll help me on this with the time? Watch it for me? Okay, Dr. Mangano.
Okay.
Good evening, and thank you for having us here. We just wanted to make a statement about our committee's plan, that special education programs are regulated by the Pennsylvania Department of Education Regulations and Standards, as well as IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and must be met in conjunction with the Chapter 5 regulations. The IEP designates the specially defined instruction and takes precedence over the Chapter 5 regulations. All curriculum revisions must be revised according to the Chapter 5 regulations and include modifications and adaptations for all children who are classified as special education, that is both handicapped and or gifted students. We just wanted to make that statement before we started. If there are any questions regarding special education plan?
We'll start to the left, Mr. Mosey.
Just one question, well, statement first, that it was obvious going through this that this is pretty complex, because I felt you people had two areas to worry about, where most of the other committees perhaps had one. Not to minimize their work, but working with the gifted and the handicapped, it has to really be, it's an arduous task. I was interested, and perhaps you can explain a little better to me, on the opening, the narrative summary. fourth paragraph from the bottom. The Special Education Action Team's objective is to ensure that gifted education will continue to receive support from the NPSD at least through the year 2003. I find the words "at least" very intriguing. Could you explain that to me?
Certainly. As we worked through this process, there was talk and rumor of gifted education perhaps not being funded and recognized as a category in the special education standards for the state regs and standards. And so that as a committee representing the community and parents of gifted students, the concern was that if this was a 6-year action plan through the year 2003, that the school district would continue to provide programming for students who are identified as gifted.
Okay, so it was just a matter of the funding. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Allen.
As we always go through things with the gifted education, the special ed, all these things, we keep running into the statement mandated by the state, mandated by the state. As a quick thing, is there much of this that isn't mandated by the state?
Very little, and we just reviewed the plan right before we came in this evening, and most of this is mandated. What we wanted to do is say we were proud of the program that we have, or the programs that we have in the North Penn School District, but we want to make sure that we always offer a continuum of options for all children who have an IEP, an individualized education program. And so we want to continue to take a very close look at that and expand some programs if needed. And those programs that we talked about possibly expanding were noted in this plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Schilling.
Just want to thank you for your hard work and a great job. No specific questions.
Thank you. Mrs. Krieger.
Okay. I have just a couple questions. First of all, I'd like to state that in reviewing this entire document, I can come to the board and say that there are still things present in my mind I believe still need to be worked out, need to be fine-tuned with this particular action plan. Having said that, my one question for the action team directors is, last week we received a input from curriculum and instruction, staff development, and what was the last one? Assessment. During the staff development presentation, there was a question where the chair responded to, I believe it was Mrs. Shear, that when they had submitted their plan to their finance liaison, they got nothing back from the finance liaison, so therefore they didn't do anything further in relationship to the financial components within the plan. My question for you this evening is, did you in fact receive any recommendations from your financial liaison, and what in essence did you incorporate into the final draft of the plan and where?
Yes, we did get feedback, and that was very early on, right after we finished drafting the plan. Any input in regard to any financial aspect was taken. We looked very closely at that. We did find that as a result of that some of the financial information we had in here was also in some of the other plans. And so if we did see that, we made note of that in this plan and pulled it out of our plan.
Okay, in reviewing this, I did not see any indication of that happening. So could you be more specific where that occurred? Because there's an awful lot of zeros in the special ed component.
Right, I think one, and I don't know the exact page right now, but okay, here we are. Priority 4, strategy number 3, result 3, plan 3. It's about 8 pages into the action plan. Number 2, students at all levels will have opportunities to use IMC resources before, during, and after school as driven by demand, including current technology. Under resources needed and estimated cost, we said it's under the technology plan. Originally, we did have a cost attached to that for basically providing services to those students when they were using the IMC. So that was one example of what was pulled as a result of the financial feedback.
Before you go any further, Mr. Edmonds, what I think I need to address then is that the copy that I'm looking from is not the revised one, in particular because there was a very specific dollar amount in relationship to this action step.
Exactly.
And basically, what it computed to was $10,800 in salary.
Mrs. Krieger, if I might address that, I gave in your board packet on Friday all the revisions, including the revised plan to which the co-chairs are speaking to. So you should have received that on Friday, reflecting those revisions.
Is this amount, even though it's in technology, the same amount?
Well, that we took out completely because we don't know what that technology plan is going to look like. I think when we initially decided to put all of the technology pieces of every plan out there up front, we realized that we had different costs and different things that were really disparate. So when we decided to pull all of the technology out, we kept the concept, but we figured that would come through with whatever we put forth in technology, which remains to be seen in terms of the direction or the phase-in or how we will really approach that. So
okay, well, I
we took that out.
Maybe I'm, the use of an IMC is not strictly for the use of technology.
Correct.
Okay. My concern as a board member is that, and I believe it was a concern of the financial liaison, that there are creative ways to provide an after-school service, such as the use of an IMC, without having to pay over and above extra salary. We can accomplish this through scattered scheduling of our employees, and this is the kind of thing that I would like to see in the final analysis throughout the plan, which I've been assured that you've already removed most of those considerations. Is that correct,
Yes,
Sam?
that's correct.
Okay. One other particular area, Mitch, which is on the next page, I believe, which is priority 2, strategy number 3, result 5. In particular, number 4. I noticed number 3 was dropped. It was in the original plan that was assessed.
That's a typo. That is a typo.
There was a number 3.
Number 4 should read number 3.
Initially, there was a number 3 that was reviewed, and
Right.
that was taken out.
Yes, and most things that have been deleted were as a result of going back to the planning team and then their recommendations coming back to us.
So they weren't all necessarily placed somewhere else in the long-range plan.
Not necessarily.
Okay. Having said that then, in regards to this particular action step number 3, students who have demonstrated mastery of a subject area should be given the opportunity to receive credit for that course and to be provided course options in institutions of higher learning where appropriate, pending legal decision. Who pays for this?
That's where the legal decision comes in, right, talking about the external.
Because you've got delineated here, college courses, cost, tuition, transportation, textbooks, materials. Who pays for that? Excuse me, why is he answering?
Mr. Dowson was on the
Because I
committee.
made the suggestion of how, and brought this issue up at the very beginning. The suggestion had been made that we would go to Montgomery County Community College, who was offering half-price tuition to high school students. And it would appear, from talking to people there, that it's much cheaper to spend $2,000 or $3,000 with a student at the Montgomery County Community College than to spend $7,000 at North Penn. Children, in many cases, have to attend the final year of high school with no courses to take, or no required courses to take, or only 1 or 2. We were just looking at this as an option.
So is this something that is only available to gifted students?
No.
It would be available to any children, any child.
So then why shouldn't this be incorporated in our curriculum instruction?
Well, it very well could be, and there could be overlap. I would like to address the point that you just made, though, in terms of what happens in terms of funding of something like this. Since I have seen this over many years in this district, there have been many different ways in which this has been handled. There have been situations where the school board has in fact paid for courses that students have taken. There have been more cases where we have accelerated or moved kids to different points where parents have incurred the cost of college courses. There is not a formal policy, there is not a statement that is an either or. All we do know right now is that the state is encouraging that all children be allowed to progress through the curriculum at a rate that is commensurate with their ability and need. And this is something that will have to be addressed as we look at in curriculum and instruction, and this is your point, very well taken, relative to graduation requirements and courses that we're going to expect kids to take and how we want to perhaps even look toward early graduation.
Okay. And I guess just finally, as I read through the plan, once again, it occurred to me, it's very obvious that there are very many measurable indicators of success that really aren't. There are a lot of actions listed, but there's no definitive results that you are trying to seek listed. And I think it's, I really do believe that this needs to go back to the planning committee for further definition. And I would like to see the things that we are presently doing that are mandated listed in the plan. Anything new for special ed only, both ends, to be only defined in special ed. Anything that is applicable to all students needs to be combined in the appropriate area, being curriculum and instruction. If it's an assessment piece, I would like to see that in assessment. If it is a staff development piece, I would like to see it in staff development. If it is a curriculum and instruction piece, I would like to see it there. It's, you know, because in reading special ed, I found myself saying, well, wait a minute. You may have children in this district that are 1 or 2 points away from being gifted or are never tested for gifted, but they're high-end achievers. Does that preclude them from anything else that a special ed child is entitled to just because the special ed child has an IEP? I think not. If we have a child at the lower end of learning that for whatever reason may not warrant remediation due to test results, does that mean that that child isn't going to be given any extra help? I think not. So in keeping that in mind, and in reading through this, I had to remind myself, is this just for special ed? Or could this be applicable to all of our children? So I think in making those few comments.
Can I respond in two?
I think you get my gist.
2 points. When we did the curriculum and instruction review, if you recall, there was a section in there, and I don't remember whether it was Mr. Allen or Mr. Mosey that asked about the supportive services, the supportive things under curriculum and instruction that would be there to help all children, and there was a whole list of things, and I think your point about adding to that would be very appropriate, and that is noted. And again, the point on measurable indicators of success versus measurable indicators of compliance were two very difficult things for everybody to really get a handle on. That is something that we are all going to need to work through as we move toward implementing the areas of curriculum instruction assessment and staff development. Those are very key points, and that has been now added to the parameters by which we will be implementing the plan.
Okay, and Mrs. Magel, just my final point, if there's any point in the special ed resource estimated costs file that is earmarked as in the budget, the special ed budget, the general budget, I'd like to know what that figure is, please, for that particular action step. And that's all my comments.
Thank you, Mrs. Krieger. Folks, we have 10 minutes of tape. We're going to keep moving. At some point, I may have to just stop everybody, and whoever I stop at still has the floor. Mr. Weitz.
The topic of inclusion is one that's always interested me, and certainly from a personal level. And I noticed that it was mentioned twice in the narrative that there were discussions held by the committee to get a definition team members discussed it. Again, it was mentioned twice, and the opening sentence of the first time it was mentioned is that the definition and an understanding of how this concept is or would be implemented with the North Penn School District was a major topic of discussion. Can you characterize those discussions for me? And also in terms of the statement, which has been a source of confusion for me, of how this concept is or would be implemented. I mean, it is. I don't understand the would be. So if you could help me with that, I'd appreciate it.
We did have those discussions at just about every meeting, and inclusion is one of the buzzwords right now, and inclusion means many different things to many different people. Part of our task was to reach consensus, and the way we reached consensus with inclusion was to look at it as least restrictive environment. When we meet as a team on any child who is eligible for special education services, we must determine as part of their program the least restrictive environment in which they can learn. And we were all very comfortable by the end of the process saying that is, in a sense, our definition for inclusion. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Going through the IEP process, which is the individual education program for each individual student, inclusion is looked at individually, so that currently, and we have been doing that as past practice and as current practice, it's a mandated issue in the IEP, but it is looked at individually for each student. So we're looking at what is the most appropriate percentage of time for each student, whether it be in special education program or in the regular education program. So as a committee, we are saying, as Mitch just said, that we're looking at the least restrictive environment that will be the most productive and the most appropriate for each student. Inclusion is looked at individually for each student rather than as a group process.
That I understand, and I think you've more or less answered my question. You've called it a mandate looking for that least restrictive environment. We don't necessarily call that a policy,
No,
but it is a mandate.
it is a mandate.
Okay. That is where the confusion always lies. So in light of that, now that we have a mandate, and we follow that mandate, and they take part in all of our policies, and I can attest to that. I've been part of a number of IEPs. Let me go to one of the very specific items in the plan. It was strategy number 8, result 2, plan 3. Sorry, there's no page numbers there, but there's a specific assure a nurturing and challenging intellectual environment that is conductive or conducive?
Conducive.
I think it says conductive to learning. And on the second page of that is the one I'm most interested in, the action step that says to promote an environment of acceptance of special education students through sensitivity training of all teachers, staff, and students to remove existing bias and discrimination towards special education students. A very important action step for the entire plan. Would you characterize, perhaps if you can, I'm asking you to summarize for a lot of people, what you think that would involve in this district, certainly since I don't believe we can mandate anything at this point in time about sensitivity training for any members of our staff.
Where, if you look over to resources needed and estimated costs, we talked about the multicultural committee or the diversity committee. And I think what we were looking at was pretty much what is already in place and what we hope to continue to see in place, where, and Mr. Allen talked a little about this, made a comment about this a little earlier, a tolerance basically for all people. And there again, it is sort of an attitude. And we just wanted to see some of the practices that are already in place continue to be in place, and that special education child be part of the total picture.
Well, if you can't tell at this point, I'm asking for an expansion of that, and I guess mostly because I don't think it's adequate. Does it need to be a policy in this district, a policy of inclusion or least restrictive environment, to be able to set up a program that would require that kind of requirement for staff to take an in-service course. I mean, maybe that does occur through the mentoring process. That's only one aspect. We can't address this now. I'm just expressing the concern. And also, how do we reach all of our students to make sure that they understand that the child that's in their class, because of inclusion or least restrictive environment, is going to be more accepting of those children? And obviously, I'm talking about handicapped and not gifted at this point.
David, I'll take that one question because
That's fine.
with the induction program that has been ongoing in the district, we actually wrote a course for all new teachers coming in. And it's a course that reviews all of special education, both gifted and handicapped, and how regular education teachers can work with those students within their classroom and understanding their needs. So that was something we put in practice. There have been things that we've done over the years to try and sensitize the students and the teachers to special education students. We had a program that was very active at the elementary level for several years. It was a puppet show that we had done. It was quite successful. But we are looking to expand that kind of thing, and particularly for the secondary level, because that's really where we need to focus.
Again, that is the key, the expansion of not continuing practices, looking for better ways to address all of those parties mentioned in that action step.
David, Mr. Weitz, and Dr. Clark, we need to stop right at this moment because what you have to say is very important. We're running out of tape. Let's take 5 minutes, please.
Judy?
Tell David what you're doing.
Is that rolling? No, they're not ready. Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's try to pull this room back together. We're looking at 10 of 10. This board still has yet to finish special ed. Mr. Weitz did have the floor. He had an ongoing conversation or dialogue with Drs. Clark and Mangano. We still have student life, community partnerships, your turn at audience of citizens, and this board has to get to an executive session again tonight. So, Mr. Weitz, you do have the floor, and we are at special education.
And I believe you have a comment for me, Sandy.
Yes, I do. Your point that you made relative to staff understanding of special education, handicapped, and or gifted, it's kind of what we call in diversity ability and disability, and understanding of that as a component of diversity, and that is a key part of what we do in our training, and we will continue to do that in our training. A main focus for our diversity training over the last few years has been at the elementary schools. To date, we have 151 staff members who have gone through some type of awareness curriculum infusion training. We will continue to do that and move that into the secondary because it is a very important point of the staff development that this committee has put in place, as well as the staff development program relative to training staff and the diversity component and having that all weave together. You also have the Exceptional Learner Program, which is what Judy was talking about, and other simulations and staff development. We will make sure that those get identified in this plan.
And let me just close with one last item, just because I think I came to that understanding here, but there is an opportunity that if the board desires to do that, that we could make inclusion or least restrictive environment a board policy as well as what is currently a state mandate, which could add more weight to some of the things that we are doing. That is something the board could do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Weitz. Mr. Hill.
Most of the questions that I was going to ask have already been spoken to, particularly Mrs. Krieger's request that the mandated courses be pointed out. I think that's important. A question that comes up continually, what is being mandated, what is not mandated. I think we can do that. I notice also that a lot of things in here require community support, community people. I think that's great if we can do that, but sometimes those things are kind of difficult to implement because you need specific people for specific tasks. And while the community does a great job on the long-range planning, I mean, there's a lot of community required to implement this plan, which I think is otherwise, I think it's a straightforward plan. I think if you answer the question Mrs. Krieger brought up specifically, I think it'll cover my questions.
Mr. Hill, to go a little further on that, when we have task forces that we work in special ed, we do invite the community to participate in that, and I think that's one of the continuing endeavors. That's a good point, thank you.
Mr. Hill, thank you very much. Mrs. Scher.
Yes, under strategy 8, result number 1, I'll just read this so everyone doesn't have to go scrambling. It says, develop and implement a method of screening kindergarten and new first grade students prior to their enrollment. Sub-level A, develop and implement a method of screening assessment of newly enrolled North Penn School District students. Under the resources, it says under current budget. Are you talking about the process that was similar or along the same lines of what we did implement up until this year? As far as screening and actually going through some sort of preliminary testing before the students come into the system?
Part of the, this process would also be the early intervention programs that students may be placed in from birth through age 5. So that would be part of our screening process. We have some students who come to us who are identified through that process, and that's what we're looking at. We were also, a suggestion from our committee was when we have new students who come to our district, that there would be a method of screening and assessing them.
Also, when the first time?
Yes.
But you are talking about a routine screening process for all those entering in, whether it be for kindergarten or first grade, as it says here, correct? Okay, I'm just interested in that, and I find it interesting because I was a little concerned when I found out this year, for the first time in years, we weren't actually screening our students. And I would just like, I would like to actually have some kind of review after this year gets going and feedback from our teachers as to how this new system, open book system is working, because I know the screening not only helped give parents a preliminary review with a counselor before their children came in, but it also helped with the balancing of the classrooms, as David has talked about the inclusion. However, it's been beneficial in helping to balance those classrooms so that there wasn't perhaps a little bit of the tilting of one particular classroom being laden with more difficult students as opposed to another. You know, we do try to juggle that so that it's not too overwhelming for any one particular teacher. And I'm wondering how the system has worked as we've done it this year, particularly as we look at this particular action step and are evaluating it for being returned back into the district.
Vicki, I do have to say one thing, that kindergarten screening that was not used this year was never used for the purposes of balancing classrooms. And I say that as a building principal who assigned children to classes. That was
never considered that?
No, that test was not considered in terms of balancing, because what you were looking at is just seeing whether or not a child had certain skills coming in, and that was all. But if they weren't able to identify shapes, you didn't balance that across the board. It just gave you information on what they knew and what they didn't know. And many of those children having early experiences going through nursery school had more experience than those children who were just kept at home until the kindergarten year. So it was just informational, that's all it was.
We've never really worked towards by social skills or what have you, that we, not that these particular children, but that you help to ensure that one particular classroom wasn't sort of the magnet or the placement for all of them.
That particular screening took at most 15 minutes, and I don't think any single principal could assess, or guidance counselor, that child should be pigeonholed into one room on the basis of that. It was purely just informational, getting to know the child.
Well, is what being proposed here that much different than what was occurring? I mean, is there something more?
On an earlier action step, and
I'm in strategy 8.
right,
Are we talking
an
about
earlier
something?
action step also talked about the screening process for kindergarten and first grade, as well as newly enrolled students into the North Penn School District. The team felt that it was worth looking at again, the possibility of some type of screening process. What exactly that would be, we weren't sure, but we felt that there should be at least some type of committee to research that possibility and look at a screening
It would not
process.
be a bad thing to take a look at other instruments, but that particular instrument was not sensitive or a great measure. It was just informational.
Okay, well then let me ask, what would be the objective of this action step? In other words, I see what measurable indicators of success is a recommendation from the committee to the board. You've suggested that we do this To serve which, what
It would be
purpose?
for earlier identification of special needs children, whether they be handicapped population or gifted support.
Okay. To, in other words, assess
Right.
needs
Exactly.
prior to
Right.
their entry into the system.
Right. And again, we have a philosophy that there is not a single criteria at any time in identifying or placing a child. So we would be looking at multiple criteria, which would be another reason why that indicator that was used seemed to be only one focus. We need more information. So the
Wasn't
purpose
quite
of
getting the
this-
job
No,
done,
was
in
not,
other
was
words.
not.
Because that's what I thought was one of the benefits was, for
Right.
the identification of the students' needs, so that we were prepared for them in the fall.
That particular test was not designed to do that.
Okay, I see also further down, about 2 pages forward, and it says, students of like ability will be grouped together for at least part of each school day. For gifted students, this will include cluster or homogeneous grouping during regular education instructional time, and homogeneous grouping during gifted support class. Is this looking towards resource or itinerant? What was the meaning?
What we are looking for at this would be a research committee through the gifted task force to look at the appropriateness of grouping students of like ability during the day into cluster groups or homogeneous grouping. Exactly what it says, but what we're recommending is a committee study this to see the appropriateness of this for students. We are not recommending or not recommending this at this time, but we're saying that we would like the gifted task force, that this is one of the specific areas that the committee discussed and would like more review and information about as to the appropriateness of grouping for students.
So perhaps have an ability grouping, is that what?
Yes.
I'm reading this for perhaps our gifted student
Correct.
population for at least a portion of the day, perhaps in those subject areas. Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Shirk. I too picked up on what David had to say, or pointed out that in your packet of information, there was great dialogue on your committee. And I was wondering if there were any minority reports rendered by those that may have not agreed with consensus.
No.
Okay. Were there any reports or any offerings given in the area or the debate going back and forth between inclusion and exclusion? That any academic papers that we could benefit reading from?
No, not that we used as part of this process.
I have not received any minority report from any committee, from any individual.
At this time?
At any time.
It's probably a good point in time to bring that up,
Right.
that if there are minority reports, at some point they have to come forward.
I will say there was some concern with the gifted population, that we relook at the gifted task force and study some of the options that we have available for gifted education. That some particular needs may not be met in exactly the way they should be, and that we need to really look at that. The last gifted task force report we had was 93, if I'm correct. So it's time to do that, and that's something we want to start this year.
Okay.
It's important.
I just would like to mention one more thing, and that is relative to the curriculum and instruction action team. And as curriculum is revised and we look at standards and we look at expectation, there will need to be a component in the curriculum that does address the needs of special ed, handicapped and gifted children. So that is something that will be ongoing as we look at Chapter 5 revisions through the Curriculum and Instruction Committee. So that's another point when you ask for that overlap that we will make sure that we have.
Okay, just a short comment. As many of you already know, the Lord has blessed me with special ed children. And this plan assures me that all is well in this district in special ed and that it will continue into the next century. And so we've always been a mecca in the county and the state for special ed, and it's because of the people that we employ, and that's the three of you, and certainly community volunteers like Mr. Donaldson. Mrs. Krieger, you did ask for the floor.
Yes, I did.
Earlier in the evening.
Yes, I did. Thank you very much, Mrs. Magel. Mr. Donaldson, I'd like to take this opportunity to apologize to you publicly for my abrupt interruption of your answer to my question. As was defined earlier in the evening tonight by Mrs. Mango, tonight's review of special education, we had requested that she make a statement publicly When these plans were initially introduced to this board, many of our administrators were not present. We viewed this opportunity of review as an opportunity for our administrators to answer our questions and be accountable for their answers directly to this board. I in no way meant to insult you, and I hope you will accept my apology. And in having said that, I hope that that it's clear now to the chairs and the administrators of exactly what the purpose of the review is. I did appreciate your input this evening. I didn't realize that you were the one directly responsible for that particular action step, and I hope you will forgive me.
I'll vote for you again.
Oh! Okay.
She feels better.
I also want to take this opportunity, being special ed liaison, to thank each and every member of the special ed team who participated in the formation of this plan. As I indicated earlier, I do believe it still needs further review. It needs further fine-tuning. And I was kept abreast along the way by numerous members of the action team as to the progress that was made. Each and every person who served gave hours and hours of time, and I personally appreciate the dedication and commitment that each person made to this particular action team. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Mangano, if you want to carry on, we're at student life.
Yes, now I would like to introduce Mr. Jim Fennemeyer and Eleanor Okotny, and this is the Action Team for Student Life. Jim was not able to be with us the evening that we did the presentation. Unbeknown to him at that time, his wife surprised him for his birthday and took him to Alaska. So,
and check
he's
out
back.
the tan. Check out the tan.
He's back.
Before we begin, both Jim and I would like to acknowledge Jeremy Sturgio's very fine job in making the initial presentation of our plan to the board at the August meeting in our absence. We would have like a brief statement before we begin. Why did the Strategic Planning Committee choose to address the issue of student life? Well, we feel for three basic reasons. First, because we are an excellent school district facing increasing enrollment. Because we want to provide a niche for each student and help create outstanding graduates. And finally, because we have a tradition of fine co-curricular activities for our students at the North Penn School District. Our action team feels very strongly that we need to provide meaningful, well-run programs for all of our students. We must make every attempt to provide paritative program between buildings so all students have substantially the same opportunities. We are particularly concerned that we capture the attention and interest of our middle-level students. At this point in their development, it is so easy for children to become disconnected and fall through those proverbial cracks. We feel if we can tap into the students' energy, enthusiasm, and creativity at this point, we hope to keep them constructively engaged. As we continue into the high school years, we feel that we have the chance to add more dimension to their co-curricular experience and encourage them to develop vocational and avocational interests that will last a lifetime. We also feel that providing these experiences, we are able to return a benefit to the community that supports our schools in many ways. From the tangible evidence of our students' success through the enjoyment of performances and art shows, all the way to the development of interpersonal skills that are highly desired by the students' future employers. In a district as large as ours, attaining the goals that we have set will take effort and organization. Although there is an increase in expenditure for implementing the suggestions we've made, we feel that it is modest in comparison to the benefit to be derived. We should also point out that most of the expense in our proposal is based on a chain of events occurring. If the timeline of those events changes, the amount and the timing of the expenditure will also change. The school board has wisely and appropriately made commitments to the co-curricular experience of our students in the past. We feel that by taking the remaining steps we have suggested, we can be more sure that the programs we provide are meaningful to the students, are efficiently run, and produce the desired effects. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we ready for board questions?
Yes,
Dr.
we are.
Mangano? Okay, we'll
Yes, we
start
are.
to the left, Mr. Mosey.
Just one question. I noticed that you're requesting an activities director, which is an additional staff person. My understanding is that we have teachers, I guess, that are monitoring the various extracurricular activities we have throughout the school district. And I don't understand why we would need someone to oversee what they were doing. I would think that they would be, if they're doing their job, they would be the best judges of what is going on with their various group, whether it be, you know, the newspaper, the debating team, or whatever. And to have someone oversee all those activities, I question it.
Well, I think that one of the reasons why we had requested or suggested such a position goes to this whole issue of parity of program, that if you have, particularly in the middle level, we have 3 different schools, varying sizes in those schools. We very strongly feel that all of the students should have very similar experiences at the middle level, so that when they combine again at the high school level, they're all at the same place in their development and have had similar opportunities so they can compete for activity space and position at the high school in a similar way. We also have problems in the middle level with the sports programming of coordinating timing, buses, children going from the middle school up to the high school as 9th graders. There are many, many aspects of the program, the size of the program, particularly in all these schools, that we felt kind of indicated that we needed a supervision of the programs to make sure that they were properly run for everyone.
If I can add to that, what we have in place right now, Mr. Mosey, is a position that I held at the high school as coordinator of student activities. The recommendation by the task force was to expand that position to go from what is now a 2/5 position to a full position as we grow as a high school from the 2,700 students that we have now to 3,000 or beyond within this time period of the 6-year plan. The position as it is now and could be expanded into deals more than the supervision of the activities advisors that we have. Certainly it has that piece to it, and not just supervision, but meetings with them and meetings with student leaders as they develop projects and programs for presentation to the administration and the implementation of those programs. In addition to the work with the various clubs and organizations of the building, my position and an expanded position as recommended deals also with community organizations that are calling into the school or other programs that keep coming to our attention through the mail or through phone calls, so that there is an ongoing process here that is more than club and organization activities that we're dealing with, but a broader focus on student life and student opportunities, both in the community and within the school setting itself. That also deals with assembly programs and other types of speakers and programs that come into the building. So it's a broader position than simply dealing with activity advisors now and in the future.
We don't have anyone handling the assemblies and speakers coming in and so forth now? We have to create another position to handle that?
No. What we're talking about is not the creation of a position, but the expansion of the position within the next 6 years to reflect the increased enrollment, increased opportunities and programming that is part of the presentation. It is not necessarily a new position, but expansion of an existing one to meet the needs.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong then. I saw a salary of $73,000 for an activities director. That to me is a new position.
Okay, there are 2 pieces. Okay, I misunderstood your question then. There are 2 positions being recommended to the task force in this arena. One that I was referring to dealt with the expansion of the high school level. The other one deals with the middle school level. We presently have a situation in the middle school in which we have an individual who is supervising athletic programs and people within the individual buildings as kind of managers of those programs. The recommendation of this committee, again, as the need arises because of what we're recommending for expansion of activity programs at the middle level, we would ask at that point, as that expansion is developed, to also provide additional time, whether, immediately a full-time or some types of part-time positions that will allow an individual to work in supervising, working with advisors, working with other staff members in the development of programs at the middle level. As Eleanor indicated in her opening, one of the concerns of the committee was that we expand what we are already doing with our middle level students to find ways to involve greater numbers of those students, because those are the students that we want to hook in to lifelong experiences that we may not be doing as much with at this period of time. If indeed we move forward with those recommendations in our report, then we feel the need for an individual or some combination of individuals to work on the development of those programs and the supervision and implementation of those programs. That's what that is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All I had.
Thank you, Mr. Mosey. Mr. Allen?
Yes, excuse me. As we get bigger, I think this aspect of our responsibility of education becomes more and more important. Because I believe that the more students you put in schools, that the more disconnected a lot of them become. And I think whatever we can do to keep them interested in school makes them better students, which is what our job is to be. I don't look at this as extra for a lot of kids. I look at this as the motivation for them to become or to stay a student, or force them to become a good student so they can go on and do the things that they find in life that are of interest to them. And I would like to compare it a little bit to what goes on at the Voc Tech School. We have a person that does the youth apprenticeship program, what's the other word I want? School to work program. And I heard this before in another presentation, and I can see this person being the same type of person that not only deals with the chess club and the band and the classes and the sports, but also starts getting the partnerships with the community for finding the jobs after school, or the mentorships that are not part of the mentorship program that we have, but it's just an after-school kid who's interested in something, and we find some place for him to go for a couple of hours after school at no cost. But if we can do that for a student and help that person be connected to the school, I think this is the type of thing that is important. The only thing I didn't like about the whole program was taking a period every week from academics and putting it into this. I think it belongs after school, but that's a minor detail. But I think this is very important to the students, and I don't look at this as, well, some of the terms I've heard, I think it's very important as a student and as a person, and I think it, again, as we get bigger, this is more and more important. So thank you for what you did.
Are you sure you weren't at any of our meetings?
I'm sure.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Schilling?
I had my own.
Many of my questions, I don't want to echo what Mr. Allen said, but, he answered basically my questions. I thank you for your hard work and dedication. I feel this is an important aspect of that school, considering its size. And also my understanding is that these, we're not necessarily creating more activity, but rather getting more people involved and expanding. Is that correct?
It's probably a combination of both. At both the middle school levels and at the high school level. Certainly the key goal is more students involved in what we have existing, but also as new interests surface, new opportunities surface, to be able to expand. As you deal with, again, adding 300 more students or 400 more students to the building, to spread out those opportunities and reflect different student interests and student abilities.
Okay, the only thing that concerns me is, will this deter from their academics, and what degree?
No, not at all. And to reflect something that Mr. Allen said, one of the things our committee did in the process of putting this together was examine some of the literature that's out there involving the impact of co-curricular activities upon academics and upon the type of skills. One of our key goals is strategy number 5 that talks about lifelong learning skills, and we spent a lot of time dealing in that area. And what we found in various pieces of literature was that students who are involved in co-curricular activities do better academically than students who are not. They tend not to drop out of school and to stay focused on school. They learn lifelong skills, the type of skills that the student activity program or student life program deals with, in many cases, are the types of skills that employers have identified as some of the key skills over and above good attendance and good academics. The additional type of skills that they're really looking for in the workplace today. So our feeling was, coming into it, we certainly had a bias to that, direction, but we also found in the literature that our bias was confirmed by various types of reports, both from industry as well as educational institutions.
Thank you, Mr. Schilling. Mrs. Krieger.
Thank you. Mr. Lindemeyer, are the programs and action steps that are listed in this document for the most part all new, or are there any ongoing at the current time?
There are many of them that are ongoing. There are some that are, I guess I'm going to refer to the part in I think 5.1, 5.2, where it talks about the compilation, the creation of files, the compilation of things.
Yes.
Where some things may be being done, but they're not real structured, they're not organized to that fashion.
Okay.
And so our committee basically said, here are some things that we can do which will take us from where we are now within this next 3-4 year period to really develop some excellent resources from the community, whether it's community service or whether it is assembly programs or speakers or things of that nature, so that some of those type of things are indeed ongoing, but we hope to be able to formalize that and do more with it and have a greater communication developed between elementary principals as to what's out there, the middle level area as well as the high school level.
Okay. Once again, I'll just reiterate my comments that I've been saying all along. I would like to see within this plan a separation, not, I don't want to take anything in particular out, but I would like to see a separation in this particular plan of what we're doing presently and what is being added or can be considered to be new, a new expense. I'd like to see in particular a greater itemization of any new costs that any of these new action steps may incur in the future. The very first page, the compilation of assembly programs, your very first action step, over on measurable indicators of success, it says files developed and maintained, annual report of assembly programs to ... Who?
Our assumption there is probably the building principal, or if there was somebody appointed, an assistant superintendent, whoever it would be deemed appropriate at that point.
Well, I'd like to make an appropriate recommendation that I'd like to see as a board member what we are offering across the board in the way of assembly programs to all of our children, not just necessarily high school or the middle level, but also at the elementary level. I think that would help each and every board member know exactly what our children are receiving annually in the way of special programs and assemblies. And in having said that, I also would like to know exactly who is funding those assemblies, whether they're being funded by the home and schools, whether they're being funded by the general budget or the individual school budgets themselves. In priority 7, which is just the next page over, strategy number 5, result number 1. Under Plan 2, it says students will attend and participate in school-wide daytime and evening performance in the arts, music, art, and drama to give them the opportunity to showcase their talents. Surely you don't mean that that's going to be a mandatory requirement?
No.
Okay, then I'd like to see the language change to be a little bit more lenient, because when you say will.
Well, it says will attend.
Yes, but when you say will, that means they will. So you can replace it with whichever subjective language that you want, that you'd like to, but will be encouraged to attend, whatever you want to add, but I think that I'd like to see that. Also, in relationship to what Pat was saying, especially at the middle school level where we have teaming, I know that through and Judy can confirm this, the team of teachers, it's been my experience, do a wonderful job of organizing the activities at the middle school level. Judy, correct me if I get it wrong, but the red and blue day, is it red and blue or blue and red day? I can't remember.
Either one.
Okay, but, well, my daughter will get very angry with me if I get the sequence wrong. That was a fantastic opportunity for me to attend one particular day where the entire school was organized, and there was an entire day of activities that went from the morning until the afternoon. And it was a very, very fun day. It was a challenging day for a lot of the children, and everything was touched, from academics to cultural, athletics. It was all incorporated into one. I'm not necessarily convinced that we need a director per se at the middle school levels to achieve the purpose of giving to the middle school children all of the opportunities that they need because of the teaming concept that is presently there. Should the board ever consider in the future to do away with teaming and go back to a different structure of education at the middle school level, maybe then would be the appropriate time to bring on board an activities director. But the way it's structured now doesn't necessarily justify the need to add somebody at the middle school level, at least in my mind. If you want to, not debate it, but discuss it with me, I've just seen how the teaming concept works in organizing special activities and special activity days at the middle school level. So I'm not really convinced that is something that maybe we should consider at this time because of the financial aspects of it. There was one other thing that I just wanted you to, no there isn't, there's a couple of things. The development of a bus fee proposal. Can you explain that to me a little bit, please?
Well, I can start
Either
with this,
one.
and if I don't cover it all. We felt that it would be very useful, particularly at that middle school level where children do not drive. Many children have family members who cannot take them places because both parents work. To have an activity bus that would take students home after school activities. So many of the students want to come and watch a game, even if they aren't playing the game, and their school team is in a game. They'd like to go and see that. After school clubs and activities, children can't all walk home from their schools. If we had an after-school activity bus and we developed some sort of fee, like, for example, $10, that if you paid $10, you would have a bus pass for after-school buses, and there would be buses every day after school, that you would be able to go back and go home after the normal bus schedule and still have that opportunity to participate in the school programs, regardless of your ability to have a parent come and pick you up. And we felt that the fee would somewhat reduce the cost to the district of having the after-school buses, that most parents, I think, would be willing to pay a modest fee to have their child be able to be bused, and that for those students who couldn't afford the busing, there are funds available in the principal's office that they would be taken care of, that they could have the bus pass.
Okay, I think this is probably an issue that probably needs just a little bit further investigation with.
Yeah, we suggested that we study the concept
And
of
also,
proposing.
I want to make sure that if something like this would be to be considered in the future, that a determination by our solicitor be made, because I'm not sure if assessing a bus fee is legal. Now, that might only pertain to busing fees to and from school, the normal school day. But at some point in the future, we may have to seek an interpretation by our solicitor in regards to assessing bus fees.
Mrs. Krieger, if I could comment. What led to this was a discussion within our committee in which we found at the middle schools there were numbers of students who really wanted to stay, particularly in the spectator area. And we kind of debated, and we said, we have buses 2 days a week. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have buses every day and a multitude of buses, enough buses to accommodate? So our wish list is the district would provide activity buses. That's where we started, an expansion of activity buses. And we came back and said, let's be realistic, on the funding of this thing. And the desire is still there to expand the amount and number of buses to provide this for students. And that's what then led the committee to say, we would recommend that we study at least the possibility of expanding the number of buses and finding a way to, fund them without going through an expansion of district funds.
Okay, but Mr. Finnemar, that's not what the language says here. The language says develop bus fee proposal. If you want to study the issue of maybe developing a bus fee, then it needs to state that specifically, study, instead of develop.
And we
Okay?
will change the language on that, because in the report that you're going to be hearing from facilities, I believe, Mr. Wood, you have in your plan a recommendation to do a transportation study? And I think that none of this can happen until that takes place. So you'll be hearing more about that there. We can't even begin here to think about this transportation or activity
I won't hear it. I'll need the tape.
until that comes forth in terms of what Art is recommending to do.
Okay. And I just have one more thing. On the next page, priority 6, strategy 5, result number 1, at the bottom, review procedures for implementation of new interscholastic sports. Are there any new ones out there that we're not doing already? Could you be a little specific?
Well, I'm not sure we looked at it
don't
from...
we do it all?
Yeah. I'm not sure we looked at, as a committee, we necessarily looked at it with any specific sports to be added, but simply felt that one of the things the district needed to do is to do a review of the way in which we prepare and recommend additional sports. So it's a fairly vague statement,
Yes.
the idea of reviewing the procedures without any agenda that we have, sports that we're out there in the wings ready to bring in. To answer your question, though, are there other sports that are out there that we don't particularly do at North Penn? Two that come to my mind at the moment would be volleyball for girls and lacrosse for boys. Both of those have come up to us from time to time, as student interest, but have not gotten themselves to the point of, being seriously considered to be recommended at a board level. Those two just come to my mind. There may be others, but they're probably the two that we don't do that some other schools do.
Thank you.
Can't believe Mrs. Krieger didn't throw in 9th grade girls soccer. She had a
Yeah,
great
we're-
segue there, and she blew it. Mr. White.
I'll take care of that later.
Well, so far tonight I've dealt with generalities and some very specific items. Now we're back to generalities, probably sweeping generalities. But in light of all the other plans and some of the topics that have come up, our diversity programs or universal values in our guidance curriculum, and everybody's looking for ways to improve communications, courses that are desired, co-curricular activities that are desired. In a large generalization, can you tell me what you think the strength of this plan is and how it enhances those other areas? What is it about the student life plan that helps all of those others along when there are pieces of it all over the place?
I can do it. Thank you. I think there are a couple things. I think the plan, first of all, provides a series of surveys to survey both staff and students as far as their interests in the area of student programming, student activities, that I don't think we have in place at this point. I think the plan also goes into the community more and attempts to bridge the needs of our students and the interests of our students and try to link that up with community organizations and individual community sponsors or supporters. I think one of the key pieces of the program that may relate to community partnerships and things of that nature is the part of the plan that deals with the community service learning component, which I think also relates to the required project that students in the class of 2001 will need to do for the graduation requirement. I think the recommendations involving greater time for individuals to help, to supervise, to coordinate, to pull together diverse activity programs and to work directly with students and outside interests to provide the fullest series of opportunities for student interest and student service areas. Those are things that come to the top of my head at least, and when I hear your question as to where it meshes. I think there's pieces here that deal with diversity, deal with assembly programs and opportunities for students to meet in forums, to serve on behalf of the school district in the areas of government, in the areas of service, in the area of diversity. So I think it crosses lots of different lines of the other presentations. I'm not sure if I've been clear enough.
I also think it provides a certain kind of, what we're hoping to achieve is a continuity program that children, students entering in elementary schools start identifying areas of interest, maybe are exposed to many, many different things than they would normally be exposed to that might help them identify their own particular interests, and then as they go through their high school years to refine their interests and develop their skills in those areas and help them move into adulthood with that.
The reason I ask the question is because if there is any level of doubt that all of these programs can be brought to bear and improve students' view of their community that they're in during their entire school life, is again something I think that's well recognized from most people about there always seems to be this group of people that are like in the middle, whether there is whether it's apathy because they socialize at a different level, if they lack school spirit because of those things, that the continuity that you mentioned is important. The survey, I think, is important because, again, the doubt creeps in because probably the students that were part of that committee, and certainly your experiences in dealing with students over the years, just says, how are we going to reach those students that have never had a voice, that still perhaps did not have a voice? Because the people that participated, those students, are activists. That's why they were on the committee. And so I'll be anxious to see how some of those surveys and how some of these programs and that continuity helps that, because I think we're all concerned about those students that just seem to, as we've said many times, fall through the cracks.
I think that's why the middle level components of the program were so important to us as a committee, because we felt that the middle level student was often the one that, as Eleanor said, can fall through the crack and suddenly loses that enthusiasm, loses that interest, and we never capture them at the high school. So our hope is to create additional opportunities at the middle level that will kind of hook them into something, connect them with the school system in the student life arena that will then carry through at the high school level.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weiss. Mr. Hill.
Yeah, I have a few comments. Part of the questions was brought up. I think that the extracurricular and arts and all of this student life is wonderful, and it's nice to bring in as many students as we can to the program. But we got to be careful. We just don't go. If I was running this program as it stands alone, looking at it, I think it's it's all things to all people, and it's overwhelming, and to a degree that can we as a public school function really afford to do all these things? It'd be all nice to do and all wonderful to do, but I think that they're a little large, a little bit more than I think that really we can afford, or we really can. And talking about what was brought up about an activities coordinator, an activities manager, and an activities director, that seems like it's an overkill to me, these type of things. I guess my feeling, and it also was brought up about the activity bus. Activity bus is opening a box of worms I didn't want to talk about. You open an activities bus, and you got private schools you got activities buses for. And busing is something that is a cost that's prohibited in the school district already. So we've got to be careful about those type of things. Because when we offer to one, we have to offer to all. And that just compounds the problem. I think the plan was laid out well, and the committee did it. Their charter was to come with a plan for student life, and I think they covered every phase of student life that could be. Many attend conferences and a lot of different things in here that I think that the board is going to have to look at carefully as we proceed with the plan. I'm not saying the plan is bad, I'm just saying the plan is overwhelming.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Mrs. Shaw.
I think as he mentioned, the number of positions in here, as you explained to Mr. Mosey, a lot of this was an extension of the existing positions, yet going into the second year of the plan, the 98-99 year, there's about $325,000 in the revised financials for salaries, strictly dealing with the administrative, instructional, and support staff salaries. So if in fact, perhaps there should have been some balancing off of existing dollars that are placed into these categories, then you may want to net that out. Otherwise, I have to assume, since this is a recent estimation, that this is actually intended, what you've evaluated in new staff to be for this.
Actually, and that has been readjusted since then, even as you met last week when you approved the extra duty positions at the middle school. One of the positions that this team was hoping to have included in their plan was to have the advisor for the newspaper, which is part of the monies that was in here, and that was approved, I believe.
For the middle level? So we put in the newspaper?
Yes.
Middle level newspaper?
Right. So there's adjustments in that.
Well, if there is, then let's bring that up to date so that we're knowing. I
will do that.
I think I have to agree with Mr. Hill with the exception of perhaps the busing. We do have activity buses right now at our middle schools. I know it's beneficial considering that our middle schools are spread out much further from our students than we do with the elementary level. So I think that's very beneficial. It doesn't require us to increase our services any further, does it, at this point in time?
Presently, I believe presently the district is budgeted about $20,000 for buses, activity buses for both the middle schools and the high school.
No, I meant, has it required us to add busing for private schools?
No.
By having those buses at this?
Not to our knowledge, no.
Okay, that's what I meant.
Yes.
But other than that, I would agree though with the statement regarding how this is expanding the services considerably, and I would have to disagree with the activity period just based on the basic philosophy, having nothing to do with dollars, but having to do with the fact that I hear time and time again, the number one complaint is that there's too much to teach for our teachers to be able to move through their curriculum as it is. And even though it may be 5 minutes taken from each discipline, it just seems to me that to then rob more academic time towards a club period time so that they can go, whether it's to the chess or the newspaper or whatever, seems contrary to one of the major complaints in education today.
If I can comment on that, because I think that's a very important comment. At the same time, I think it goes really to the heart of the philosophy that we came through with on the committee, that program, like some of the others, needs to be really viewed as a co-curricular program, that there is instruction through the activity program, and there are skills that are learned in that are, if not equal to, certainly important skills that students will take from that at the middle level. As I said to Mr. White, one of the other goals here of the middle level activity period that we are recommending is to hook kids in that are not hooked into the system at this point. With the activity period that we're recommending, it will allow every single student in our middle schools to be part of some type of co-curricular activity, not just those who automatically gravitate toward activities, but every student to have that activity. When you're talking about the time, okay, and we certainly recognize, and we certainly talked about that, and we had, as all the committees, parents and administrators, including middle-level administrators on our committee, what we viewed, we did not necessarily specify in our report how often that needed to happen. Are we talking once a week? Are we talking once a cycle? Are we talking twice a month? Are we talking once a month? Okay. We felt that this could be developed, and could be developed, I'm going to use the example twice a month or 2 cycles a month, by taking 5 minutes off of each of the classes in that type of limited capacity would allow us to achieve our goal of bringing students into this type of learning atmosphere without any serious jeopardy to the regular academic program itself. So that you'd be dealing with basically 40 minutes, if you will, twice a month, let's say, in that program, not as frequently as I think some people may think it would be. The other thing that we did, thanks to Dr. Clark, is to contact the Department of Education to see how that related to instructional minutes. That is considered by the Department of Education as part of the instructional time that a school could have. So we felt comfortable in making that recommendation to the board.
May I add two things to that? And I know we're on a tight time frame and want to keep moving here. We're talking about co-curricular activities. In the way that this is viewed, these are activities that are related to the curriculum, as we have the activities at the high school. And number 2, I've heard a number of times about a time study being done relative to middle school, and that is something that came out of one of your earlier conversations, and that has been added to the task of the Curriculum and Instruction Committee, that we will be looking at a time study in terms of the middle school. And one other thing that I heard tonight that I think this team we need to take a look at is how much of this can be interrelated into the curriculum and instruction in other areas, because so much of it is a part of some things that overlap.
Mr. Sher, is that it, or are you still?
Well, I guess just to wrap up, my point is it wasn't that long ago when band practice was after school. It was not incorporated as a part of the curriculum day. It's now associated with a choice of band, chorus, or related arts for our 8th graders, and I believe our 7th graders also. And I guess the point is that for while you're sort of forcing this opportunity for students to be introduced to things that we believe that they should be in, whether they want to or not, we're also carrying in those students whose parents would rather have them in an academic but aren't given the choice because the designated period's already been decided for them. And so for while you're trying to do for one that you may not otherwise be able to get your hands onto, we've got all these other students where the parents or those students may rather benefit from a computer course and take their football or their chess club or whatever after school. And so somewhere along the lines, if someone's reviewing this, if you're going to look for providing options, I think we also need to consider the academic options should be there.
I don't think there was any intention on our part to exclude those types of activities from the activity period, that there could be many, many options, including math clubs, computer clubs, things of that nature that would interest children that are definitely academically oriented. It would not have to be a sport, it would not have to be music. It could be a sport, it could be music, it could be art, or it could be academically oriented, that we would provide options for students across the spectrum, everything that would interest them, and we would solicit their interest before we establish these clubs. We also have mechanisms in place that students can bring up concepts of new things that they would like to do and have those approved and have them established.
Well, that's okay, you can go on. Okay, more time to.
A few things that I'd like to see. They're not really questions, they're essentially comments, things I'd like to see, and if they're already being done, stop me. As you well know, in many institutional and philanthropic settings, there are combination athletic activities directors. They handle both. I'd like to see what this proposed activities director would look like if you place that with an athletic director, if there is or not overlap, if that is not a two-headed person by chance. You see it all the time in your residential day schools, your residential treatment centers, day hospitals, your state and county pen as athletic activities directors. So I'd like to see what that would look like. I've always been intrigued at the full-time description of our current athletic director that only handles 10 through 12, and now we have one at the junior high level. So let's see what that would look like. Also, that time study, Judy and Sandy, just to mention, that should probably start now, because you're at the start of a new year. So if you're collecting data on what a school year looks like, and what we do, how much, when, why, and where, you would want to start at the beginning of a year.
As soon as we get the curriculum committee up and running, we will be attacking that. It'll be first on our list.
It's a good moment in time. It's a window of opportunity. More than an activities director, I think we need somebody who has a fiduciary charge to handle money. I understand that the handling of student monies for activities, on and on and on, fees, et cetera, monies from Gates, is a hairball. Not only in responsibility, but accountability, and I understand a lot of fingers are handling money, and maybe it shouldn't be that way. I don't believe I read in that plan a component that handled or addressed all these activities and who's handling the money and how are they handling it. We've just dealt with a situation as best we could in terms of the home and school. It may be time for the activities, student activities department. Pardon me?
That's an excellent suggestion.
Thank you. So, time study. On that 40 minutes 2 times a month, my initial reaction when I heard about it was to say no. Let's add more math. I also like to understand the flip side of what this would do with the union. A fraction of our faculty are responsible for activities, sports, etc. If we did this 40 minutes twice a month, that's 80 minutes. What are the rest of the faculty doing for 80 minutes on my time, our time, in terms of there being bargaining union members?
We would expect that all faculty members would be part of that activity period and have some type of activity during that period, regardless of what they did as an extra duty after school.
Well, that's probably a bargain item. Mr. Jordan's going like this in the back. God bless him.
That's exactly how it would work.
There was a day.
Faculty member would have
We had it. We had it.
Okay.
There was a time.
It would be intriguing dialogue. It really would be. And I certainly want to hear you two go at it.
Mr. Weir notes that at North Penn, at a much earlier period of time in my life and in his, we had an activity period very similar to this in place, and there are a number of other schools, particularly middle schools, that do this type of thing.
And when he was a kid, we worried about him falling through the cracks. But he got hooked on student activities, and look what happened.
Yeah, he created Tommy Clemenses and Terry Bukowski's and Donna Menkels, and you're responsible for a lot of us. That's why you Anyway, just in closing, I have to say, I look over there at Mr. Finnemeyer, and I just smile so favorably on you because of what you did in my life and what you've done in a lot of lives. And you are, without a doubt, one of my most favorite teachers and most favorite faculty members, personally and professionally. But, you look at this, I just hope that as we look at our entire student life picture, when you compare it against other districts, other rural districts, other urban districts, we are our most fortunate people who spent the money that we have on our children. I think we need to be more appreciative of what we have, not be so far-reaching. And as we look at a community that is in economic, ups and downs here, as we look at what area businesses are doing, we have to be really, really careful that we don't appear greedy or too far-reaching, and that we don't appreciate what we already have. We have a gourmet host of everything in this district, and it's been the right thing all along. We don't want to ruin that. So I thank each and every one of you, and Mrs. Acockney, thank you for your volunteer community service.
Thank you.
Yes, it's appropriate.
Well, and our last group, and this one is one that's going to help involve us in community and getting partnerships going, so all of this can happen. And Gail Tatum and Suzanne Franks will give you a review of a very important action plan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Just a note for the board, you'll notice that the student cameramen have left. It is now, I understand it's a practice, it's going to be a an administrative practice, that the students are to be let go at
10:30.
10:30 because they are students and they need to get home and they have homework to do and they have get a good night's sleep. So that's why they are missing.
Are the cameras on automatic
The
pilot?
cameras are running.
They are.
Yeah,
Yes.
cameras are on, they're fixed, but there are no cameras.
That's
Wide angle.
Wide angle, yeah. Go ahead, ladies.
We won't take long, we know it's late, everybody's tired, and we're tired as well and ready to move on. Community partnerships was a fun project to be part of. I think it's something that there was a great esprit de corps about. We were very pleased that the Long Range Planning Committee saw this as something important, and the members of our committee did as well. The possibilities are endless. I guess we all know that. We tried to be a little bit realistic about what we did. There was a sense that this district should assume leadership in partnerships. We already have. We have many partnerships already that we're proud of within the community, with businesses, with nonprofit groups, and we think the possibilities for more exist.
Yeah, all that I'd like to say is that all of us community members and board members alike are very concerned that our dollars and our efforts are being spent to the greatest good of our students and their educational experience. The most natural way for our community to experience what's happening in our schools is through rich community partnerships.
We're ready for your questions.
Okay, thank you. We're going to start to the right this time, Mrs. Shaw.
Yes, Gail, I don't have the page, but I did see in here where we had an administrative position, yet it was budgeted for a total of $40,000.
It's a specialist position.
Right, but that would be basically a $27,000 or so salary when you include the cost of benefits, and I wondered why it wasn't based on the assumptions, the dollars assumptions that were given to each of the teams.
We initially had it as an administrative one, is that what you mean? And then we were advised, when we went back to the Long Range Planning Committee, we were advised to look at figures more critically, and we decided that we felt it could be done with a position at that level. And so we changed it at the advice of the committee.
No, I was saying because it was listed as an administrative position, yet the dollars were way beneath the
No, it's
administrative.
listed as a specialist now, in the revised piece that you have, it is.
So you're talking outside contracting, is that what you mean?
No.
Or-
There are several people who are employed in the district at this time who we have designated as specialists. People like Bob Gilmer, who is the head of the TV effort that we have. Kevin Eck, who is the payroll. Purchasing specialist. These people are not considered administrators and do not begin at administrative salary levels. They begin at a different salary level that is above the support staff level, somewhere in between. And so we saw this position at that level.
Okay, I guess I'd just say here it is, 40,000 for a coordinator. Still have to say that it's below, basically any internal pay levels other than the secretary that I've seen here. So I would have to question it unless you meant it part-time.
No, that's not true.
When you're including benefits in this?
It's $40,000 including benefits, is the figure we were given to use for a specialist, yes.
I don't know, Dennis.
Our specialists are paid between $30,000 and $37,000. The people that I always refer to as the gray area people. I mean, they're not administrative and they're not support staff.
Okay, well, just so we know, so we could figure somewhere in that ballpark plus benefits. Okay, yeah, is there anywhere in particular where there's been a strong attention to building community partnerships along the lines of Merck, our situation with Merck, to where your committee actually move forward to generate revenues through partnerships with the business world?
We didn't specifically earmark the Merck partnership in our discussion, but within here, we talk about partnerships with businesses in the area, and certainly revenue potentials exist within that, although the committee as such did not study the revenue generating aspect of the partnership as the major force. They really concentrated more on developing partnerships where the students would have an opportunity to have career opportunities, where people from businesses would come in and work with students and with teachers. Certainly the Merck partnership is evidence of the kind of partnership that you're discussing, and that is inherent in this, and the potential for that exists.
Or correct, possibly sponsorship of certain school needs and et cetera like that, and I just wondered, if I had missed it, or if there was something in here where you did attempt through one of the strategies
We did not.
to address that.
We did not discuss sponsorship. If you're discussing it in terms of putting a sign on a bus or having the stadium with signs or anything which would sponsor facilities or equipment, those kinds of sponsorships we did not discuss in detail because we really felt that that was a philosophical position that needed to be taken by the board and the cabinet first before it would come to a
Right,
committee
I don't
for
think our
discussion.
schools want to look like the shoulders of the I-95, but I do remember seeing one of these state-of-the-art professional scoreboards in one of the schools that I reviewed. I went through and we were interviewing the works of certain architects. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I think I even drew David's attention to it at the time. I said, I can just see the letters MERCK up there, and I think that with our banks and things like that. Do you recall that, David? Wasn't it a beautiful piece of equipment that we certainly couldn't, we would probably all be shot if we ever committed tax dollars towards purchasing that, but where perhaps through some of our local companies and the generosity of some of the businesses we could.
Can you imagine?
Some of that. Well, it's getting late. We're losing the audience. We're losing our board here, so I'll pass.
We've lost everybody. Okay, board.
It's okay.
Everybody's getting nervous waiting for Vicki to assign somebody else a purchase. Mr. Hill.
Maybe Union National, maybe we could auction it off, whoever buys the nicest piece of equipment.
What can you say negative about community partnerships? I think they're great. I think if the more the community gets involved, or local industry gets involved, or any outside group gets involved with the school, is always a positive aspect. The more people you get involved and knows what's going on in the school district, the more they understand about it, the better everybody is, and makes things go a lot easier. And I think any activity you can do along that would be great. I believe that activity probably should, at the present time, should rest with Ken Lear and his office, and if it grows beyond hiring somebody else beyond that, I think we have to really look at that time what the financial impact is, what other things we need, and what that person can do to bring this on. But I think we should maintain as much activity as we can in Mr. Lear's office today on doing what you have planned.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hill. Mr. Weitz.
I'll just comment by saying that in your statement of purpose, it says that your ultimate goal is to build a school community which interacts with, represents, and benefits all segments of a larger community. And I think it's a message that at least I felt was communicated very clearly to the Strategic Planning Steering Committee. I know it's of great interest to Dr. Bose, and I can tell you that it was a very important factor in the technology strategic plan. And I hope this committee continues to work towards that very important goal, because I think it is one of the things that will bring a better understanding about our schools and how they do really affect our community.
We agree.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weitz. Mr. Stevens.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple things. I promise to be brief. I have a couple concerns, only because the amount of time that this particular, well, just like the rest of them, but in particular this action team had to really get into the opportunity of looking at community partnerships. I really think that this also needs further review and further study. I would like to see a specific job description for this specialist. I think that needs to be developed. I think it needs to be very specific, and I think it needs to be an appropriate job for somebody that is more business-oriented instead of educationally oriented. If we even hope to generate any type of financial or revenue-generating partnerships in the future. I was disappointed that your committee didn't have enough time to investigate in greater detail the opportunities available to our community through financial and revenue-generating partnerships and sponsorships, because they're out there. And we have an opportunity before us in the next 6 years to develop those partnerships and to bring about meaningful financial revenues in the way of grants, in the way of subsidy for things that we want to do, or partial subsidy for the things that we want to do in the future in the areas of technology. I'm aware of school districts across the country that have been very successful in going out and seeking business partnerships with companies like AT&T and IBM that have come in and have helped them to fund and facilitate the establishment of computer labs in their elementary, middle, and high school levels. This is the kind of thing that I'm looking for us to do through community partnerships. I think the things that you've included in here is a good basis of which to start from. But in my opinion, it's not enough, and I think to submit this at this time would be incomplete. And so once again, I would like to suggest to you that you include what we are doing now. I would have liked to have seen a list of the partnerships that we have currently in the district. That was not provided to us, and I think that that would have been helpful to see the type of partnerships that we have currently. I'd like to see that after further review, and I'd also like to have this go back to the planning committee for further review and to be brought up at another time soon for further analysis by the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schilling.
Yeah, I just want to again thank the committee for a wonderful job. To have all these dedicated people involved, just in all the committees, it's just wonderful. And I see a lot of great wisdom in the plan. Community partnerships should be encouraged. I mean, my goodness, we should get as many businesses involved as we possibly can. I know that's your objective. And what else more can I say? But thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Schilling. Mr. Allen.
Yes, thank you. I believe if this is as important as what I'm hearing people say it is, I think we have to realize we have to make an investment. We're going to try and get some income into the school district through partnership. The investment is going to be somebody to do that. I think that most of the people that work here right now are rather busy, and we try to put a full-time job on them. We're just going to ask, what do you want me to stop doing that I'm doing now? So I think it is important. I think it can be good for everyone, but I think we have to make a decision and a commitment ourselves to make an investment of some sort into the process. It isn't just going to happen the way things are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Mosey.
Just a quick comment. I ditto what Don said, that when this board first took over almost a year ago, one of the things that we did address to Dr. Bose was that we should accentuate the positive about the school district. And there are a lot of positive things that are going on, and I think that you're heading the right direction. And I think we need to accentuate this and get more involved. As Mrs. Krieger said, there are many avenues out there that we can explore and we should explore. Thank you for your words.
I would just like to make a comment to what Mrs. Krieger said. And we as a committee, I think, felt that there were many avenues to explore. And I think it's something that can only be done with this coordinator, because it is someone that needs a lot of time, to follow up with the business community, all the avenues that are out there. But your point is well taken in that there are a lot of opportunities out there, but we need to really uncover them, and we need someone to do that.
But you understand where my level of concern comes in without having a job description. To just ask for a new position and not know what it is exactly you're looking for with this specialist. My concern is, will we really hire someone that can do that job for us?
Oh, absolutely.
So,
and I think the things that we laid out in our plan were as specific as we felt we could get at that point with, the groundwork for what a person would be doing in that job.
Don't misunderstand,
Oh, no, I'm not.
my input. It's not that I'm opposed to hiring somebody to do that. It's that if the need is there and the desire is there, then let's justify the need for that.
Right.
And it's not here now in front of us. So
Before we close, could I just say that I believe Donna would be able to back this up. Dr. Bowen talked very desperately about a position, seems similar to this, the one for the School to Work program, dealing with the tech prep, wanting someone to help connect those students with jobs.
There is a similarity between those, and I think there would be some shared responsibilities. I couldn't articulate all that Juan had articulated about the school board coordinator, but I think there probably is some area there where there's some shared commonality. They're not identical, but I agree with you, there is some similarity to that.
Well, at least to the degree of making those contacts within the businesses and in us placing students there, there's also having that connection, because the person was supposed to be very astute at knowing what business was looking for and how to deal with, on a business level with these. And I just thought it seemed like there could be a connection in dual role for them in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sherb. Mrs. Tatum and Mrs. Franks, just 3 points real quick. You're looking for this coordinator, and I think that somebody is needed, but I don't feel that we necessarily have to put them on payroll first and look for them to produce. Here's an opportunity to put up a subcontract where somebody works on commission only, where they come in, they start grant writing, they start seeking partnerships, and they work on commission based on what they are capable of bringing in. It's not much different than sales or public relations, but we award them the work and then see what is produced from that work, and they get a percentage of it. Also, I see our partnerships, sorry, John, our partnerships, we're looking at this as something that has a monetary advantage to us, and I think when we do that, see partnerships as only a monetary relationship, it lowballs partnerships that we have with our volunteer programs, where we're getting people, we're getting lives, we're getting experiences. I know you have seniors that volunteer, so as we look at partnerships, we can't keep focusing on how much money can we bring in to match what we have here.
I agree.
But, the human lives, giving of time and energy is just as valuable. And I guess as you look down those avenues of outside sponsorships that do have monies attached to it, I think the best place to start is gleaning the experience that Dr. Bose has had in Indiana. I think one of the most intriguing parts of his interview with the board prior to his being selected by this board was how they do it out in Indiana. So it's a good place to start. So ladies, I thank both of you, Mrs. Franks, Mrs. Tatum. Thank you so much. Dr. Mangano. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, you have been a very kind and patient group, and I've said that a couple of times tonight, and I mean it. At this time, it is your turn. It's audience of citizens. It is 11:10. We're certainly not going to rush you along, but those that wish to speak, please come forward. Name and address, please.
Rosalie Elias, Montgomery Township. I was one of the 44 members of the Special Ed Long-Range Planning Team, and in reference to Mr. Weiss's question regarding the lengthy discussion on term inclusion, I really would like to offer some clarification. Our group was comprised of members representing many areas of special ed. We dealt with the needs and interests of students who are deaf, blind, mentally retarded, mentally gifted, autistic, have learning disabilities, physical disabilities, to name a few. As a group, we were instructed to develop terminology that would be applicable to all of our special ed students. And I can tell you that was an extremely challenging task. With that in mind, we were finally able to come to consensus using the terminology of least restrictive environment, because it encompasses inclusion where it is appropriate. But as a point of information, you need to know that the inclusion model was developed for special ed students with disabilities. It's to help them with social and citizenship skills. The inclusion model was never intended for gifted students. I'd like to close by saying we all worked extremely hard. I think that Mitch Edmonds and Denise Fagan did an absolutely outstanding job. we all work very hard to try to find creative ways to help our students, to help meet their needs in ways that would not cost this board or this community any extra money. We tried not to overburden you anymore with any more additional finances. And with that in mind, we tried very hard to try to find ways to actively recruit volunteers wherever possible. And this is basically the approach that we were taking. So thank you very much. And we really worked very hard on this.
Well said.
Ms. Liz, thank you very much, and we thank you for your efforts, too. Dr. Tomas?
I'm Judith Thomas from Hatfield Township. I'm here as a member of the Diversity Committee, and I have a few questions and a few comments. Maybe because I'm hopelessly naive about internal politics, I didn't understand why Dr. Caltabiano was asked not to comment just because she's not on the payroll. My understanding was that we were all volunteers on this committee, more than 100 members, so I didn't understand that how her status of not being an employee of the North Penn School District negated all the hard work what she has done with us. So maybe somebody can explain it to, not just to me, but some other people who were wondering about it. I hope, on the other hand, that it is a good sign that there were so few questions about the Diversity Committee's work and so few comments, and I hope that this means that the school board members were basically pleased with this committee's work, and it meets their expectations and it will be approved. So I'm optimistic that this is what really why it wasn't a more involved discussion about the subject. And I just want to say that to some people, not necessarily here, but in the community, diversity seems like, oh, it's the buzzword of the 90s, and this is just something what we have to talk about or have to deal with, but I think most of us know that diversity is here. You are looking at me, and I am a diverse person who feels very much at home in this community, maybe because I don't look different, and until I start speaking, it's not very obvious that I'm from a diverse background, but a lot of people have more difficulties fitting in. And I want to call everybody's attention to one aspect of the Diversity Committee's work, which I think is very important, and it will help. I mean, basically, why do we want to deal with diversity? Because we all live here and we all want to get along. And I think the sooner we can teach this to our children, hopefully they will still remember when they are adults, and they will have less problems and less conflicts in their lives. And this is the conflict resolution idea, which I would like to emphasize, that I think it is a crucial aspect of the Diversity Committee's work, because there will be always differences between people, between children, and how you manage those differences and how you handle the conflicts arising from the differences makes the difference of the quality of life that we all lead. And that's all.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Anybody else, please? Yes, sir.
My name is Eric Waters, and I live in Towmenson. I'm a senior at North Penn High School, and I've been in North Penn School District my entire life, so I'm in like the last level of the whole thing. I came in tonight and saw the statement of vision on the door, or as you came in, and it said a lot of things about what the goals are of North Penn School District as a whole, and it summed up basically as trying to get people to be good people. And what I can tell you from experience is like that's really not what the focus is within the school. It's kind of like we'll tell kids what they shouldn't do and what not to do. But I think what we need to do is teach them to want to be good people, and more importantly, why they should want to be good people. We talked about diversity tonight, and if you ever go to a lunch period at North Penn High School, you see the table with the black kids, and you see the table with the Asian kids and the Indian kids, and it goes even past racial things. It comes into cliques, where you got the skateboarders and this and that, and the jocks, and there's not much unity. And handicapped, we talked about handicapped and gifted people. What handicapped kids get called, they're the B-Pod squad, because that's where they come from, B-Pod. All these things is like, they get made fun of. It's because people don't really want to be good people. You know, it's like there's no unity or no love. It's like there's no desire to. You know, it's like cheating, for example. If you cheat, people should want to not cheat, but they don't want to. If you get caught cheating, I mean, you get in trouble, and the first thing you think of is, what can I do to cheat better, you know? It's like there's no focus in trying to get the kids to not want to. I think that's what we have to do through things like activities, and through school. It's kind of hard in school, but through other things to get kids interested. Right now, I'm going to speak totally honestly. What kids do in high school is they drink and they get high. That's what they do. I mean, there's some who do the certain things, and there's some who want to strive to get good grades, but the main thing is kids really don't want to be in school. I'm very, very, I like being in school, because I like meeting everybody, and I like doing things. But nobody really, it's why I don't want to be here, and people get high all the time. Everybody I know, everybody, okay? It's a serious thing. And it's like there's no want to do anything else. It's like there's no meaning in anybody's life. It's they go to school because they have to. It's like they're being babysitted till they're 18. And it's like, what I want to do is try to bring new things. I think we need to offer activities and alternatives for kids to do things, that help them want to choose to become good people. One of the things with activities, kids aren't allowed to wear hats at school dances. Who wants to go to a school dance where you're not even allowed to wear a hat? Nobody wants to go. They'll hang out and drink. That's what they do. Nobody even reads. I have 2 friends who read. I mean, it's really ridiculous. So I'm not here just to complain. More, I want to try to find alternatives, and I want to try to put things out there where kids can say, that's what I want to do. I want to get some meaning in my life. I want to learn about things. I'm interested in the environment, so I want to go do it instead of sitting around and watching TV. So I just want to ask everybody to please try to keep an open mind when it comes to new things and new activities, there's anything, and letting the kids, give them the freedom to create activities for themselves, instead of they don't really. What do you want to do? What do you do? I ask people, what are you into? I don't know. I don't do anything. I mean, there's no meaning. So I think people need to have the freedom to create what they want to do. So I want to ask everybody to try to keep an open mind when you're letting students create what they want to do for their lives, to give them meaning, to let them do that, and to support that, to support the growth. So, thank you very much.
Mr. Waters, we're very fortunate to have you in our school district. You have a very sensitive heart, and your heart has a burden for your classmates and for this district, and we'd encourage you to keep coming to these board meetings. Bring your friends, bring the do-nothings with you if they don't have anything else, and continue to stay convicted by what you just told us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Sure? It's early. No, it's not. We have, ladies and gentlemen, we do have an executive session. I do want that on the public record tonight, and it'll be for matters of litigation and real estate. A motion to adjourn?
So moved.